Chapter 291. What nonsense are you talking about? Old Shen Foran's brows wrinkled and subconsciously refuted Shen Yuan's words. What kind of identity does she have? How would eldest Shen take a fancy to her? I'm just speaking casually. Grandmother need not take it to heart. Shen Yuan smiled and changed the topic. After saying a few more words, he then took his leave. Before leaving, he looked at Zhang Mama without batting an eyelid. After Shen Yuan left, old Shen Foran kept thinking about what Shen Yuan said. On one hand, she knew that Shen Yuan's words were outrageous. No matter how open-minded Shen Xian and wife were, they would not take a fancy to that family's lowly status. Moreover, Shen Qiu was not a lecherous person, so this matter was as difficult as ascending to heaven. But on the other hand, old Shen Foran was moved by Shen Yuan's words. If Shen Qiu found a noble family's young lady, would not his power go up a level? Old Shen Foran could not see Shen Qiu doing well, so how could she watch him grow more powerful? If he married her own grandniece, not only would it not be better, it would drag the first household of the Shen family down and drag Shen Qiu down. That was called good. Zhang Mama was massaging old Shen Foran's shoulders as she softly said, Old Foran, actually this old servant also feel that second young master's words are somewhat reasonable. After a pause she then said, think about it, if eldest young master and Biao young lady were married, they would be even closer. Biao young lady would be on old Foran's side, so it would be much easier to do anything. She said softly, if the marriage is successful, in the future money matters would be easy. Biao young lady's money would not be your money? When the words were said, old Shen Foran's eyes lit up. Correct, if Shen Qiu and the family's grandniece were married, then the grandniece would naturally be on her side. By controlling Shen Qiu, it was the same as controlling the first household. Zhang Mama continued, if Biao young master and fifth young lady were married, it would be even better. In the future the entire first household's money and property would all belong to old Foran. Old Shen Foran's heart moved. Zhang Mama's words were all aimed at her, making her heart burst with joy. Thinking of being able to seize the first household's assets and secretly use all kinds of methods to make the first household in chaos, old Shen Foran was extremely happy. But in the blink of an eye, he became worried and said, it's easy to say, but my grandnieces and nephews all came from small families. It's not like old master hasn't seen the world. How could you take a fancy to them? My old madam. Mother Zhang smiled. You've forgotten about the methods you used in the past. It's just a small matter between a man and a woman. How can it be so complicated? Nothing is impossible if you use your brain a little. Her words caused old Shen Foran to have a little reverie, and after a moment, old Shen Foran also laughed. Most likely she wanted to laugh in a charming manner, but because of her old age, it was somewhat strange. That kind of old amorous expression made her look exceptionally ugly. She said, that is also true. A man and a woman's love is just a small matter. After saying those words, she and Zhang Mama looked at each other and saw the deep meaning in each other's eyes. Old Shen Foran said, someone come and find the box in my room. My pair of grandnieces have not seen for a long time, so it is time to give them some greeting gifts. Outside the room, Shen Yuan looked at Rong Jingtang's low laughter and a trace of sneer flashed in his eyes before he slowly walked out of the courtyard. In the western courtyard, Shen Miao handed 10 banknotes to Mo Qing. Go to Baoxiang Lu and look for a young lady called Lu Ying. I have already inquired about it. 100 taels of silver can buy her for a night. Take the money and sit with her for a night. Do not do anything and go every 3 days. Shen Miao said. When Mo Qing heard the 3 words Baoxiang Lu, his face turned green, and when he heard that Shen Miao wanted him to look for young lady Lu Ying, his face turned from green to red. He delayed taking the banknotes and looked at Shen Miao. Young lady, you are joking with this subordinate. Chapter 292. When did you see me joking around with others? Shen Miao's face was serious, and Mo Qing thought about it. Ever since he knew Shen Miao till now, Shen Miao had always been serious and did not do anything to joke around with others. But it was too outrageous to want him to go to the brothel. Mo Qing shook his head and stammered with a red face, young lady, this subordinate. Why must this subordinate go to Baoxiang Lu? Shen Miao looked at him. Speaking of which, after following her for so long in her previous lifetime, she indeed did not see Mo Qing involved with any young lady. After being a servant for so many years, one thought that it was because of the strict rules in the palace, but who knew that Mo Qing had such a temperament, hemming and hawing? How was he like a commander of the guards? She said, "Let you go, then go. If that young lady Luing asks why you are like this, then do not say anything. In short, listen clearly and be a mute." Mo Qing. Seeing Mo Qing's unwilling expression, Shen Miao said in a sharp voice, "You do not even listen to my words? This subordinate does not dare." Mo Qing quickly said. When the words came out, he felt somewhat depressed. He was a dignified 8 feet tall man and there were few opponents under Shan Qiu's command, so why did he feel flustered after being shouted at by Shan Miao? Logically speaking, even though he was protecting Shan Miao's safety, he was still Shan Qiu's subordinate and he did not treat Shan Qiu with such caution. Could it be that after following Shan Miao, his servility had become so strong? He was puzzled after much thought but heard Shan Miao continuing, "I heard that this young lady Luing is naturally charming and has many means, and there were countless of people that fell under her skirt. Even though she is not the signature of Bao Xiang Lu, she is still considered a popular young lady. I picked you because I know that you are a gentleman and have a firm will. Let you sit for a night, then sit for a night, and do not take advantage of the opportunity to do anything. If you mess it up, you do not need to stay in the Shen family's army anymore." Mo Qing's face alternated between green and red as he had never felt so embarrassed before. It was fine if Shan Miao said it so blatantly, but she even used a scrutinizing gaze to sweep over his entire body, and even stopped at a certain place on his waist. If Shan Miao was not the mistress, one feared that Mo Qing would have brushed his sleeves and left in a huff. He wanted to cry but no tears came out. He did not know how Shan Miao grew up to have such a temperament. To look at him in such a manner, Mo Qing felt that he was like a pork on the chopping board. Seeing that Mo Qing's face had turned purple, Shen Miao then let him off and waved her hands. "Go. Remember what I said." Mo Qing ran out in a flash. Jingzhe had just returned from outside and when she saw the situation she said, "What happened to guard Mo? You look like you are in pain. Did something happen?" Mo Qing had always done things calmly, and this was the first time one saw him in such a sorry state. "Nothing, just feeling shy." Shen Miao said. "How is the matter of inquiring?" Jingzhe was somewhat curious as to what Shen Miao was talking about when she heard it, inquired clearly. "Old foreign's maiden family's Biao young lady and Biao young master will arrive in 2 days." "Really?" Shen Miao smiled faintly. "That Biao young lady's maiden name is Jing Chu Chu. How did young lady know?" Jingzhe was surprised. Shen Miao did not speak and lowered her head to hide the killing intent in her eyes. Naturally she knew that it was her previous lifetimes. Eldest saw. 2 days later the skies cleared up. Shen Miao got up early and went out to the courtyard to watch Shen Qiu and Shen Xian compete in swordplay. On such a cold day, both of them were sweating profusely and the surrounding guards were secretly applauding. Just when they were in high spirits, they saw old Shen Foreign's maid shirt running over and saying that old Shen Foreign wanted everyone to rush to Rongjing Tang as the maiden family's Biao young lady and Biao young master had arrived. Chapter 293. Shen Qiu scratched his head and asked curiously, "Which Biao young lady or Biao young master? How come I do not know?" Luo Shuiyan quickly understood. It is the relative of old Tai Tai's paternal family. Previously one had not heard of it, and did not know why they suddenly came over. Shen Xian did not have any reaction. Old Shen Foreign was his stepmother but old Shen Foreign's background doomed her to not be seen in public. For so many years there was no news at all from that paternal family and only knew that they were from Suzhou. But they came to the Ding capital from thousands of miles away, and were of the younger generation. Since old Shen Foreign was so fond of them, they could only go and put on an act. Shen Qiu put down his sword and went back with Shen Xian to change clothes. When he turned back he saw Shan Miao standing at the door with a somewhat cold expression. He could not help but walk over and ask, "Why is younger sister suddenly unhappy? Just now it was still all right." Shen Miao recovered to her senses and looked at Shan Qiu before smiling. "Nothing." When the few of them reached Rongjing Tang, they heard old Shen Foreign's laughter from afar. Ever since Shan Qing's accident, old Shen Foreign had a sullen face every day, and there was no time for her to be this happy. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan were somewhat surprised. When the few of them stepped into Rongjingtang, they saw that Chan Rochio's and Shen Gui's household were actually there. In front of old Shen Foren stood a male and female. When old Shen Foren saw Shen Xian and the rest coming, she said to the two people in front, "This is your eldest beau's family." She then said to Shen Xian, "This is my brother's grandson and granddaughter, Guansheng and Chu Chu." Jing Guansheng, Jing Chu Chu. When the two of them heard it, they quickly turned around and greeted Shen Xian and entourage. Shen Miao stood motionless and calmly sized up the two people in front of her. Jing Guansheng was 18 this year and Jing Chu Chu was 16 this year, both at the prime of their youth. Jing Guan was ordinary and slightly plump. However, his skin was white and he had a scholarly air. He wore a brown long robe. The material was considered good, and the cut was also generous and fitting. However, his eyes revealed a faintly discernible shrewdness which completely destroyed the scholarly air. This Jing Chu Chu was actually not bad. Perhaps old Shen Foren's maiden family had always looked good, as Jing Chu Chu's appearance was similar to old Shen Foren's, a pretty daughter of a humble family. But compared to old Shen Foren when she was young, she was much more restrained. The primrose-colored fragrant silk skirt and the autumn-colored lotus gown were also extremely exquisite. She had the countenance of a flower and the face of the moon, but seemed to be extremely shy and bashful as she shyly spoke and saluted, but her eyes were staring straight at the ground, not daring to look up at anyone. When she greeted Shen Miao smiled. "Why is Biao older sister only looking at the ground? There's no sign of me underground." Jing Chu Chu was startled for a moment and raised her head. She looked at her at a loss and then looked at old Shen Foren. Old Shen Foren suddenly frowned. Chu Chu has just arrived and is somewhat afraid of strangers. "Fifth girl, you should be more courteous." Old Shen Foren's unscrupulous shielding immediately made Shen Xian and the rest's expressions change. They would not let Shen Miao feel wronged for an unknown relative who was not related by blood. Thus their attitude towards Jing Chu Chu immediately became somewhat cold. Old Shen Foren did not feel it at all, but it was Shen Yuan who frowned and looked at Shen Miao without batting an eyelid. Shen Miao smiled, afraid of strangers. No matter, one would not be afraid after staying for a few more days. In this place, one would eventually become familiar with one's surroundings. Her words were kind and there seemed to be some rare warmth, but in the ears of those who were attentive, they felt that it was not the case. Jing Chu Chu smiled shyly at Shen Miao before lowering her head to play with the handkerchief in her hands. It was as if one would blush with one more look. It was Jing Guansheng who was at the side who smiled gently and elegantly at Shen Miao. Chapter 294. Shen Miao's gaze did not even land on Jing Guansheng. She stared at Jing Chu Chu but could hear the sound of her teeth grinding. Jing Chu Chu was always like this, shy and bashful. She had no schemes and would always lower her head timidly, as if anyone could bully her. So when the incident happened, when they saw her and Shan Qiu lying on the same bed after drinking, everyone would insult Shan Qiu for being worse than a beast. Who would have thought that this young lady who was as pure as a piece of white paper would at the end put on a green hat for Shan Qiu? And because she accidentally killed her adulterer, Shan Qiu was sent to prison. Those military matters that often went wrong after marrying in and Shan Qiu's broken leg from the horse, most likely all had something to do with Jing Chu Chu. And at the very end, Shan Qiu's body was found in the pond and Jing Chu Chu ran away with the money of the first household of the Shen family. A woman's heart was the most poisonous. Shen Miao felt that this face that was as gentle as a rabbit was more poisonous than a snake. After all, even though Shan Qiu did not like it, he still treated Jing Chu Chu sincerely after marrying her, and with Shan Qiu's sincere temperament, he would definitely not let Jing Chu Chu suffer. But Jing Chu Chu was an out-and-out white-eyed wolf. Shen Miao kept staring at Jing Chu Chu, and even with Shan Qiu's careless heart, he also sensed that something was wrong and asked in puzzlement, "Younger sister?" Jing Guansheng also said, "Why is fifth younger sister staring at Chu Chu?" Jing Chu Chu took a step back and somewhat nervously turned her body sideways to let Jing Guansheng block Shen Miao's gaze, as if she was very afraid. Shen Miao smiled gently. "Biao older sister is really too beautiful. One was not careful and looked too much." Shen Yu bit her lips. Now that Shen Miao's appearance was getting older, she had already taken away a lot of her limelight, and now there was an additional Jing Chu Chu, making her heart extremely uncomfortable. Jing Chu Chu's face turned red and whispered to Shen Miao, Younger sister is the one who is beautiful. Shen Miao smiled and declined to comment. Old Shen Foreign coughed twice and said, since Chu Chu and Guan Sheng have arrived, they are guests of our residence and are all one family. Fifth girl, eldest brother. Bring them around more on normal days. There was obviously Shen Yuan and Shen Yu, and at the very least there was Shen Dongling. It was not like the Shen residence only had Shen Miao and Shan Qiu, these two grandsons, but he came over to warn them. Shen Miao's lips slightly hooked up and looked at Jing Chu Chu, who had her head lowered and smiled warmly. Naturally, I will take good care of older sister. She usually had a delicate appearance, but in this room of females, there was a kind of unruffled bearing, and that unhurried smile that bloomed just now had an indescribable charm. Jing Chu Chu was still all right, but Jing Guansheng was somewhat infatuated looking at her. Seeing Shen Miao like this, old Shen Foreign was extremely satisfied. She said with a smile, since that is the case, all of you can withdraw. I still have some words that I want to discuss with Chu Chu, that girl. After so many years of not seeing one another, one do not know if the family is well. Old Shen Foreign's loving look fell into Chen Roqiu's eyes and she was somewhat moved. However, she only respectfully agreed and followed the crowd to leave, except for Rong Jingtang. Outside of Rong Jingtang, Jing Guansheng said to Shan Miao, what does fifth younger sister like to do at home? Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan were walking at the front and did not hear the words, but it was Shen Qiu who walked to Shan Miao's side vigilantly when he heard it and did not speak as he looked at Jing Guansheng. Shen Miao gently smiled. Nothing much, just reading books. Coincidentally, I also like to read books in the residence. Jing Guansheng smiled. Most likely one can seek advice from Biao younger sister. Shen Miao swept a glance at him, and even Shan Qiu noticed the contempt in her eyes, and was somewhat surprised that Shen Miao would be so unfriendly to a person whom she had just met for the first time. He only heard Shen Miao saying, forget it. One think that Biao older brother's residence does not have many books to seek advice from me. It is better to get someone to send a few books to Biao older brother, as they are all unique copies. She actually did not conceal her disdain of the other's poor background. Jing Guansheng's face stiffened in a moment. In Rong Jingtang, old Shen Foreign was holding Jing Chu Chu's hands and said benevolently, to be so beautiful at such a young age. One do not know if there is any betrothal at this age? Jing Chu Chu softly said, replying to old Foreign, not yet. Not yet. Old Shen Foreign's smile deepened. With your appearance and temperament, it would be good if you can be my Shen family's granddaughter-in-law. Jing Chu Chu lowered her head and her face turned even redder as her hands gradually clenched. Their Jing family was only an ordinary merchant and heard that their grandfather had a sister who had prospered in the Ding capital. Thus they sent the two of them to the Ding capital, hoping that the other party would be able to help them. Early on, when they reached the Shun residence, Jing Chu Chu was already dazzled by the riches and honor of the Shun residence. If she was able to marry into the general residence, then she would not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of her life, and she would be a foreign of a wealthy family. How could Jing Chu Chu's heart not be excited? It was just that she could not show it on her face. Old Shen Foreign patted her hands and smiled. At this age, you are very compatible with eldest family's Chuer. Our Chuer is now a deputy general, and what is even better is that he is still unmarried. Chapter 295. Ever since that day when Jing Chu Chu and Jing Guansheng came to the Shun residence, there was a subtle atmosphere in the Shun residence. Everyone knew that old Shen Foreign was a selfish and stingy person, and was not a warm and generous person. Facing her maternal family's grandnephews and nephews who had not met for many years, not only did she not show any cold face, she treated them very cordially and often gave them money as gifts. But these two people seemed to be planning to stay in the residence for a long time, and did not have any intention to leave. Because old Shen Foreign treated them politely, the servants would also look at her expression and similarly treated them politely. In the eastern courtyard of the Shun residence, in a certain side room of Kai Yun Yuan, Wan Yinyang was sitting in front of the table, and the colorful knots were quickly formed in her hands as she spoke to Shun Dongling, who was sitting behind the screen practicing calligraphy. Has old Foreign's temperament changed? She treats Biao young lady and Biao young master so well that it is almost better than Linger. Old Foreign's calculations are not wrong at all. Shen Dongling sat behind the screen and her complexion was much better than before. At least she was not as pale as before. Now that Shen Gue often came over to Wan Yinyang's place to sit, He also paid more attention to her, and let people send a lot of medicinal herbs. Shen Gui's attitude immediately made the servants in Kai Yunyuan see some clues, but there were some who were still observing. Even though Ran Wanyun was crazy, Shen Yuan was still a young master, and even if Wan Yinyang was favored again, Shen Dongling was still a daughter. Linger also feel that it is somewhat strange. Wan Yinyang stopped what she was doing. But what is the purpose of old Tai Tai fawning on these two? Shen Dongling smiled. Young lady and young master. Old foreign naturally hoped that there would be someone who would seduce them. Wan Yinyang quivered and suddenly understood and looked at Shen Dongling. Who does old foreign want to make good with them? Powerless people from a small family, and also old foreign's paternal family. Shen Dongling carefully put down a brush. Whoever old foreign hates the most, naturally it would be that person. Just as Shen Dongling said, in the western courtyard of the Shen residence, Shen Qiu and Shen Xian had just finished one round of practice, and let their subordinates continue to practice as they prepared to rest for a while, when they saw a yellow-clad young female walking over from the end of the courtyard. This young lady was as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as the moon, delicate and timid. She carried a bamboo basket on her wrist, looking very pitiful. She walked to the side, lowered her head and timidly called out, "Cousin, uncle." It was Jing Chu Chu. Luo Shuiyan was guiding the soldiers' movements, and when Shen Xian and Shen Qiu saw this, they were somewhat surprised. Shen Qiu took a step forward and said, "What is younger Biao sister doing here?" When he said the two words Biao younger sister, he was somewhat not used to it. After all, he had not seen Jing Chu Chu for more than 10 years, and to suddenly have a Biao younger sister, it was somewhat hard for one to accept. Jing Chu Chu smiled shyly and placed the bamboo basket on a stone platform at the side before whispering. Chu Chu had made some snacks for herself. Thinking that Biao older brothers would be tired from practicing the sword, one made some things. One hoped that Biao older brothers and Biao Shu would not dislike it. As he spoke, he lowered his head and opened the lid. Sure enough, a few plates of pastries were brought out. Those pastries were delicately made and smelled sweet. Before Shen Xian could say anything, Shan Qiu, this foodie, had already swallowed his saliva. Shen Xian was also somewhat gratified. Jing Chu Chu was born timid and weak and looked to treat others sincerely, but was somewhat timid. But no matter what, a young lady who was skilled in making pastries would be welcomed everywhere, especially when this young lady was good-looking. Luo Shuiyan was a female general, so how would she know how to make soup? Shen Xian and his son had a good impression of a young lady who could cook. Chapter 296. Jing Chu Chu said, "After disturbing for so many days, one's heart is terrified." Chu Chu does not have much ability, so she made some snacks to express her feelings. Look, she even knew how to repay kindness. Shen Xian and his son liked people who were polite and sensible. Generals were affectionate, and Jing Chu Chu's performance was indeed not bad. Shen Qiu said, "Biao younger sister need not worry. Just treat this as your home and as one family. There is no need to disturb." Jing Chu Chu shyly lowered her head, and Shan Qiu picked up a piece of cake and smiled. "Then I will not be polite." Just as he was about to bite it, he suddenly heard a voice from behind, "Eldest brother." Shan Qiu turned his head over and saw that Shan Miao had come over since some time ago. She was standing at the side of the courtyard with 4 maids behind her, looking at him with cold eyes. One did not know why, but Shan Qiu had a feeling of guilt and subconsciously put down the cake in his hands before asking, "Why is younger sister here?" Shen Miao did not speak and lifted her feet to walk towards them. When she got closer, she saw Gu Yu Jingzhe, Bai Lu and Shuangjiang holding a basket in their hands. Shen Xian asked Jiao Jiao, "What is in your basket?" Today's weather is somewhat cold, and thinking that everyone are tired and thirsty from practicing the sword, one made some soup. Shen Miao lightly swept a glance at Shen Qiu, and Shan Qiu felt a chill on his back. He heard Shen Miao saying, "Let those soldiers come over to drink the soup. After stewing mushroom chicken soup for the whole morning, it is good to warm up the body. I will go call." A Qi, who was standing beside Shen Qiu, was overjoyed when he saw that and ran over to the training grounds. After a while, the dozens of soldiers in the courtyard followed over. Shen Miao let Jingzhe and the rest scoop the soup for everyone. Those soldiers were Shen Xian and Shan Qiu's most capable subordinates, thus they were placed directly in the general residence. When the soldiers saw that there was soup to drink, they were very happy and smiled. It is still young lady who is considerate of us. Young lady is really kind-hearted. Rough people were actually the best to bribe and win over. Shen Miao knew this very well. Achi drank a mouthful of soup and exclaimed, "This soup is really not bad." He finished it in 2 or 3 gulps and passed it to Jingzhe. Another bowl. Jingzhe rolled her eyes at Achi. "Of course it is good to drink. This is personally cooked by our young lady." When Shen Xian and Shen Qiu saw it, they were surprised for a moment before Shen Qiu said, "Younger sister personally cooked it?" "Yes," Shen Miao said lightly. "Old GEs do not drink anymore." Shen Xian roared, "You are not allowed to drink." He shouted at Guyu, "Give me a big bowl." Luo Shuiyan had just drunk Bai Lu's soup and was also very surprised. "Jiao Jiao, you actually made this soup yourself? How did your cooking skills improve so much?" The fragrance of the soup floated out and naturally made one salivate. Shen Miao smiled as she looked down, casually made it. In the first few years of her past life, in order to gain Fu Xiuyi's favor, she used all sorts of methods to hone her cooking skills. Afterwards, when she went to the Qin country, she learned a lot of rare dishes under the difficulties of those people. Speaking of which, she had at least seen the dishes of the imperial family of the 2 countries, thus her horizons and means were much more profound than ordinary people. As for that young lady from a humble family that came to the Ding capital for the first time, Shen Miao's eyes swept over to Jing Chu. Jing Chu was standing behind the pillar, and this time she did not lower her head, but bit her lips and held back her tears as she looked at the group of boorish people who were drinking happily, as if she had suffered a lot of grievances. The D young lady personally cooked the soup, and it was much more precious than the snacks that Biao young lady made. Moreover, Shen Miao gave a portion to all the soldiers in the courtyard. With such a comparison, Jing Chu, who only made snacks for Shen Xian father and son, was really too stingy and could not be seen in public. Jing Chu was ashamed and angry as she looked at Shen Miao with a trace of hatred. Chapter 297. Shen Qiu also wanted to scoop some soup, but Guyu and the rest did not give it to him. Shen Qiu also sensed something and guessed that Shen Miao was angry with him, but he did not know what he did wrong, and could only look at Shen Miao. Shen Miao waited until everyone had almost finished drinking before she let Bai Lu take out a bowl from the bottom of the basket and said, "You like sweet, so this bowl has honey in it. Drink it. Younger sister is really good." Shen Qiu was overjoyed and snatched it over to drink big mouthfuls of soup. Shen Miao could not bear to look at his gluttonous appearance. When those soldiers received the soup that Shen Miao personally made, their hearts were half touched and half liked it. Naturally, they flattered Shen Miao and felt that Shen Miao did not have the temperament of an eldest young lady, and was approachable and beautiful, just like a fairy. Shen Miao was surrounded by the soldiers and Jing Chu was completely left out. There were several times when she wanted to leave, but at the end she clenched her teeth and stayed. When everyone went to practice their swords, Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan also went over. Shen Qiu sat on the stone lion to rest, and Shen Miao then walked over to Jing Chu's side and said with a smile, "Biao older sister's desserts are not bad, but martial artists would be tired and thirsty after practicing swords during the day. You still make desserts, wouldn't it make their mouths even more parched?" Shen Miao said with a smile, "Next time it is better to make soup." Jing Chu's face turned green and white. Shen Miao's words were clearly exposing that she was using the pretense of sending desserts, but her thoughts were not really thinking for these martial artists. Otherwise she would not have sent these dry things. Even though she was angry in her heart, Jing Chu still lowered her head in panic, as if she was very afraid. Many thanks to Biao younger sister's reminder. Chu will not need to worry. Finishing, she looked at Shen Qiu, who was at the side, for help, hoping that Shen Qiu would help her out. Unfortunately, even though Shen Qiu's personality was sincere, he was a blockhead who did not understand amorous feelings in matters between men and women, thus he felt inexplicable when he met Jing Chu's gaze. It was Shen Miao who smiled when she saw it. Eldest brother did not want to eat Biao older sister's pastries just now. "Eat some now." "Cook." Shen Qiu waved his hand. "I just drank a bowl of soup. I'm a little full and can't eat much. Let's eat later." Shen Miao was very satisfied. The bowl of soup that was given to Shen Qiu was especially sufficient. She did not believe that after Shen Qiu drank this bowl of soup, he would still have the stomach to eat Jing Chu-Chu's pastries. Unless Shunqiu was transformed from a pig. Jing Chu-Chu was somewhat disappointed. Shunqiu stood up and said, "I will also go and practice." He then walked towards the courtyard. Looking at Shunqiu's receding figure, Jing Chu-Chu was somewhat unreconciled and wanted to say something but could only bite her lips as she watched. Shun Miao gently smiled and patted her hands. One fear that Biao older sister's pastries will not taste good when they are cold. If Biao older sister does not mind, one can send it to second older brother. Second older brother? Jing Chu-Chu looked at Shun Miao in puzzlement. Yes. Shun Miao smiled gently. Like my eldest brother and the rest, they are always in the bitter cold northwestern region all year round and would not be able to appreciate these exquisite things. But my second older brother is different. He had already entered the official career at a young age and is now in the capital. His future is limitless. Shun Miao shook her head and sighed. It is a pity that there is no one around to take care of his daily life. Males are always not concerned about food and clothing. Perhaps Biao older sister's Suzhou snacks would suit his appetite. When Jing Chu-Chu heard that, her eyes were somewhat cloudy and uncertain. She only heard Shun Miao smiling. Perhaps in the future if second older brother has a wife, one would be able to enjoy the good fortune of eating. One do not know which young lady would have the fortune to be my second saw. Biao older sister does not know that my second older brother is the sweetheart of many officials' young ladies in the Ding capital. Second young master. Jing Chu-Chu hesitated for a moment before asking. Currently there is no young lady that you fancy. Chapter 298. Shun Miao sighed. Second older brother is busy with court matters all day. How would he have the time to see other young ladies? Jing Chu-Chu was deep in thought and Shun Miao did not expose her and spoke for a while. Seeing that Shunqiu and the rest did not have any intention to stop, Jing Chu-Chu felt that it would be strange if she continued to stay, so she left. After Jing Chu-Chu left, Shunqiu then came over and carefully looked at Shun Miao for a while before saying, "Younger sister, why are you strange today?" "How am I strange?" Shun Miao said unhappily. "Is eldest brother angry that I interrupted you from eating Biao older sister's pastries?" "I do not mean that." Shunqiu was so anxious that his face turned red, but he heard Shun Miao waving her hands without a care. "Forget it. But now you are at a good age and a lot of young ladies are looking at you. In the future one must open one's eyes wide when picking a sister-in-law." Shunqiu understood these words and said helplessly, "Younger sister, what are you talking about?" Biao younger sister also did not mean that. She only came to send pastries. If you really like her, then eat as much as you want. Finishing saying these words, Shun Miao left without looking back. This time back, Shunqiu had never seen Shun Miao so angry at him and jumped in shock as he watched Shun Miao walk away. On the way back to the room, Guyu asked, "Is it that young lady does not like Biao young lady? Otherwise why would one be so angry?" "Yes, I do not like." Shun Miao rubbed her forehead. She really hated Jing Chu-Chu. Towards such a proud person like Shunqiu, to make him break his leg, wear a green hat and finally be imprisoned on a murder charge, she could not wait to peel off Jing Chu-Chu's skin for this kind of snake and scorpion-hearted female. But Shunqiu was a kind person and did not know that a person's heart would be bad to such an extent. Seeing that in this lifetime Shunqiu was almost bewitched by Jing Chu-Chu's appearance, Shun Miao was furious. "But did young lady not tell Biao young lady about second young master?" Guyu said. Perhaps in the future Biao young lady's interest would turn towards second young master. Just now when Shun Miao and Jing Chu-Chu were chatting, they did not deliberately avoid the few mates and Guyu could hear the meaning in Shun Miao's words. Shun Miao shook her head. She is not stupid and if she was moved by my words, she would not be Jing Chu-Chu. Shun Miao smiled gently. But it is good to have some thoughts. The few maids were somewhat baffled as they did not understand why Shun Miao would treat this timid and weak-looking Biao young lady as though she was facing a great enemy. Baoxiang Lu was the biggest money-squandering establishment in the Ding capital. If one were to say that brothels were divided into different grades, then Baoxiang Lu would definitely be the top in the Ding capital. Any one of the girls could be the main hostess of an ordinary brothel. Plump and thin, shrewish and gentle, cute and adorable, innocent and flirtatious. As long as one could think of it, Baoxiang Lu had it. Because of this, the price of the ladies in Baoxiang House was also the most expensive. The beautiful young ladies at the door waved their fragrant handkerchiefs to welcome the guests. A male wearing armor walked in, and it made the few young ladies to look at him a few more times. Those who could afford to come to Baoxianglu were either rich or noble, and most of them were young masters of wealthy families or officials. But this male in front did not seem to be from a wealthy family, and the baleful aura on him made the young ladies retreat. Until a middle-aged Sunyang dressed in red walked out and smiled when she saw him. "Gentleman Mo is here again? Are you still looking for Luing today?" Mo Qing nodded his head and took out a banknote from his bosom and handed it to the other party. When that female received the banknote, she smiled in satisfaction. "Gentlemen, follow me in and one will bring you upstairs. Luing has been waiting for you these few days." Mo Qing suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and calmly followed this person upstairs. Chapter 299. Baoxianglu's young ladies were the most expensive, and similarly, Baoxianglu's young ladies were also the best. Even though Luing was not considered as the leading hostess in Baoxianglu, she was considered to be a beauty, but this was only relative to the rumors outside. In fact, Baoxianglu would have new young ladies coming in every day, and every one of them had good looks and talents. Males were fond of the new and tired of the old, so the number of guests that came to look for Luing had decreased by a lot. But recently the young ladies in Baoxianglu knew that Luing, who was somewhat deserted, had a big business recently, as a young male would come to look for her every 3 to 5 days. In Baoxianglu, it was very rare for a guest to only pick one young lady at a time. Everyone guessed that this was to redeem Lu Ying's freedom. Mo Qing followed that female to a small building upstairs, and the red-clad female withdrew with a smile. On the soft couch, a young female was dressed in a light red muslin robe as she reclined and hugged a zither. Her watery eyes were filled with affection, and there was an ambiguous smile on her lips. Her clothes revealed half of her shoulders, making one's imagination run wild. Mo Qing took a deep breath and looked straight ahead as he walked to the table to sit down. He poured a cup of tea for himself and started his day's itinerary, in a daze. The sound of the zither abruptly stopped, and Luing had a flustered and exasperated look on her face. She walked to Mo Qing and said angrily, "Gentleman Mo had come a few times and turned a blind eye to Luing. Could it be that you are playing with Luing? Or is it that Lu Ying's body is dirty?" The sisters were all envious that she was able to make it big because there was a male who was willing to pick her alone. But no one knew that this male was good-looking but useless. No matter what tricks he used, this person would not even take a look at him, not to mention anything else. Mo Qing shook his head but did not speak as he stared straight at the teacup in front of him. But his heart was extremely helpless. What Shen Miao said was indeed right. This Luing was indeed a flirtatious female. Previously, when she used methods to tease him, Mo Qing himself was somewhat unable to control himself. Now sitting here for another moment was torture, but Shen Miao wanted him to continue sitting like this. The angrier Luing got, there was a seductive smile on her face. She simply sat on Mo Qing's thighs and hooked her hands around the other's neck before whispering into Mo Qing's ears, "Gentleman Mo, are you willing to let me sit like this?" With a paw sound, it was Mo Qing who pushed Luing onto the ground. Situated in the Kwai Hualu opposite Baoxianglu, in one of the elegant rooms, the table was filled with a dazzling array of jade plates and musical instruments, with 3 people sitting in the middle. A man who looked like a guard walked in from outside and bent his head to whisper a few words into the ears of the purple-clothed youth sitting in the middle. Speaking of which, Ji Yushu spoke in puzzlement. Why did Shen young lady let her own guards go to Baoxianglu to look for young ladies? Moreover, this guard only watches and doesn't eat, Gao Yang added. Towards Shen Miao, Gao Yang and Ji Yushu no longer treated her as an ordinary young lady of a military family. Everything that she did seemed to have a deep meaning. Thus, when they knew that Shen Miao sent Mo Qing to Baoxianglu to look for young ladies, both of their first reaction was that Shen Miao was planning to scam someone again. Bai Xiaoshang's people went out to observe for several days in a row, and the thing that made one's teeth drop was that the guard picked Luing but did not do anything and just sat in Lu Ying's room for a night before leaving. They carefully inquired about Lu Ying's background, and she was just a prostitute that was sold to a brothel. There was nothing special, so they did not understand the deep meaning of Shen Miao's actions. Could it be that she wants to groom a eunuch as a confidant? Ji Yushu's thoughts were exceptionally strange. Now it is to let that guard adapt to the life of a eunuch in advance? Your thoughts are always so wonderful. Gao Yang muttered. I see that she wants to win over Lu Ying. Perhaps it is to deal with the other two households of the Shen family. But there is no need to look for Lu Ying, as there are more young ladies in Baoxianglu who are more seductive than Lu Ying. He looked at Xie Jingxing. Third Xie, what do you think of this matter? Chapter 300. Xie Jingxing was looking out of the window, and when he heard that, he lazily glanced at the two of them and said, You two are very free? In any case, you have some friendship with Shen young lady. Could it be that you do not care a little? Ji Yushu said. Third Xie, older brother. You are smart, so you must know. I don't want to know. Xie Jingxing interrupted him. I need to go out of the city for a while. Is it because of the Jade Rabbit Festival? Gao Yang asked with a frown. The emperor plans to let old Xie go to battle at the beginning of spring. Xie Jingxing said. One cannot wait. The old Xie that he was talking about was naturally the Marquis of Lin and Xie Ding. Gao Yang was silent for a while before he said, If that's the case, I'm afraid we won't have enough time. Heard that recently Xin Yuan and Prince Ding are very close. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up. It seems that they are preparing to deal with the first household of the Shen family. Xin young lady is going to be unlucky again? Ji Yushu was somewhat surprised. Why does she always provoke these people with bad intentions? That Prince Ding is not a good person. Which person who was targeted by Prince Ding would have a good ending? Prince Ding is an unfathomable person. Gao Yang frowned. Even though he does not seem to be interested in power, his private military strength is no less than others. Shen Xian has military power in his hands, and an ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. The Shen family has a large business and is already feared by the imperial family. If Prince Ding were to take action, one fear that Shen Xian would be greatly injured. Is not Shen young lady in danger? Ji Yushu looked at Xie Jingxing. Third Xie, older brother. How do you want to help her? Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. Why should I help her? You are not temporarily considered as friends. Ji Yushu's eyes widened. Did you not save her previously? You don't intend to help Miss Shen? Xie Jingxing looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. His eyes were as deep as a pool of water, and it was obvious that he had an extremely romantic look, but the words that he spoke had a kind of cold indifference. I need the Shen family to help me delay time. It is good for Prince Ding to deal with Shen Xian. Ji Yushu sucked in a breath of cold air. Prince Ding's residence in the Ding capital. The young man on the high seat was dressed in a light-colored luxurious robe. His appearance was cold, but when he spoke to the people below him, he was extremely amiable, and his coldness melted a little. This person was not anyone else but Prince Ding Fu Xiuyi. At this moment there were a few strangers sitting in the hall, and these people were the advisors of Prince Ding Fu Xiuyi. He knew how to use people well and knew how to be courteous to the wise. If it was an ordinary prince, although they would give money and land to their advisors, they would not have the same respect as him. Not only would they be on equal footing with him, when they spoke, they would also be extremely respectful. It was because of Fu Xiuyi's attitude that he was able to attract many wise people. It was because of these wise people that Fu Xiuyi's schemes and grand plans were still kept in the dark, including Emperor Wen Hui. The young man sitting in the middle was dressed in blue. His appearance was somewhat out of place among these advisors because he was too young. He stood up and Fu Xiuyi asked, Xin Yuan, what do you think? You can say it. Xin Yuan cupped his hands towards Fu Xiuyi. When he just entered officialdom, he secretly became Fu Xiuyi's person. Fu Xiuyi was a person who knew how to recruit talents, and Xin Yuan had talent and ambition, and was able to endure the loneliness of being outside. Thus Fu Xiuyi thought highly of him. Shen Yuan said, Now everyone is secretly fighting for military strength, and whoever has military strength will have more chips. Ming Qi's current military strength is Xie in the south and Xian in the north. Even though the Xie family's military strength is strong, but His Majesty let the Marquis of Lineage go into battle at the beginning of spring, so there must be a plan. The Xie family cannot be moved, but the Shen family is different. Shen Yuan paused before continuing. Shen Xian took the initiative to stay in the capital for half a year, and there are a number of people who want to win Shen Xian over. There are too many variables in the Shen family's army, and if one is unable to obtain it, it would be better to destroy it. If one were to take a gamble, perhaps it would be in line with His Majesty's intentions, and also allow His Highness to prove that there are no other ambitions. Shen Yuan himself was a member of the Shun family but kept saying, Shun family. It was obvious that he did not put himself and Shen Xian together. His words were obviously targeted at Shen Xian. Fu Xiaoyi looked at him with a smile. Perhaps he understood but pretended not to know. After all, Shen Yuan's words to him only had advantages and no disadvantages. He said, "What you said is indeed correct, but the Shen family is currently unable to find a single loophole. Even if one were to find a loophole, there is no reason." Shen Yuan did not speak. Fu Xiaoyi's eyes flashed and his tone became more amiable. "But since you are in the Shen residence, you must know some things that ordinary people do not know." He looked at Shen Yuan. "If this time the Shen family can be controlled, your credit would be the biggest." After obtaining the assurance that he wanted to hear, Shen Yuan then respectfully spoke, replying to Your Highness, this official's people were mixed in the troops long ago. Previously, when the Shen family's army was fighting in the northwest region, there were some things that were not in line with the rules. At the moment the evidence is still being collected, and once the evidence is complete, this official would definitely present it with both hands. This official guarantees that even if this time the Shen family's army is not completely collapsed, at least it would be a big blow to their vitality. Fu Xiaoyi smiled faintly. "Then one would have to trouble you." Shen Yuan bowed his head and smiled. Chapter 301. This new year in the Shun residence was very lively. Originally, because of Ran Wanyun's and Shan Qing's matter, the atmosphere in the general residence was low, but with the arrival of Jing Chu and Jing Guansheng, old Shen Foreign was very enthusiastic. She often let the siblings walk around the general's residence, and Shen Yu was someone who was used to dealing with people, so it did not take long for her to address Jing Chu as good sisters, but no one knew if it was sincere or not. Even though Shan Yu treated Jing Chu and her sister well, the place that the siblings loved to run to was the western courtyard of the Shan residence. Especially Jing Chu, she would often send pastries and food to the people who were practicing swordplay. With the previous lesson, when she came back later on, she would bring everyone's portion of soup, but the taste of this soup was much inferior compared to what Shen Miao made previously. Those lowly soldiers were straightforward people, and their hearts were all thinking about the soup that Shen Miao made, and did not show much gratitude towards Jing Chu's attentiveness. It was the same today. After Jing Chu brought the food over, Shen Qiu did not speak much with her and wanted to continue practicing swordplay when Jing Chu called him, "Biao older brother, Biao younger sister better return earlier." Shen Qiu laughed heartily. Those who practice swordplay are all rough people. Blades and swords have no eyes, and it would not be good if one accidentally hurt you. Moreover, you run over here all day and you are a young lady. It is not a good thing to watch us men practice swordplay. It was actually a tactful order to chase the guest away. Jing Chu's face suddenly turned red and she looked at Shan Qiu incredulously. Her eyes were rippling as if she would cry in the next moment. When an ordinary male saw her actions, one feared that they would have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. It was just that Shan Qiu was never one to appreciate beautiful women and just stood there, and did not want to go forward to comfort her. Seeing Shen Miao like this, Jing Chu's originally red face suddenly turned white. She hurriedly lowered her head and picked up the basket. Chu understands. She lifted the corner of her skirt and trotted away. Those who did not know would think that Shan Qiu did something to her. After Jing Chu left, a person appeared behind the pillar. Shen Miao said, "Eldest brother, you really do not know how to cherish flowers." Shen Qiu scratched his head. "Am I not afraid that younger sister will be angry?" "Why should I be angry?" Shen Miao said lightly. Shen Qiu instantly felt a gust of cold wind blowing past as he said, "Younger sister does not like Biao younger sister, right? I don't have any grudges with cousin, why wouldn't I like it?" Shen Miao asked. Jiao, did that girl secretly bully you?" Shen Xian, who had just finished practicing his swordplay, also walked over, and just happened to hear Shen Qiu and Shen Miao's conversation and said, "If she bullied you, do not speak and beat her." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Luo Shuiyin saw that they were talking excitedly and also walked over. When she heard what was said, she glared at Shen Xian. Jiao, do not listen to your father's nonsense. How can a young lady casually make a move? If she bullies you, go back and tell me, and I'll beat her up for you. Isn't that still a beating? Shen Qiu muttered. Let me do it. I'm young and strong. Shen Miao said. She did not bully me. Then why don't you like her? Luo Shuiyan asked. Even a slow person would be able to see that Shen Miao did not like Jing Chu. As long as Jing Chu came over, Shen Miao would let Shen Qiu demonstrate piercing darts in the courtyard. Piercing darts was actually somewhat cruel, and in general Shen Xian and the rest would not do it in the residence as they were afraid of scaring the maids. They would find some lively little animals to be live targets, as the bloody scene was not good to look at. And every time Jing Chu came over, Shen Miao would say, "Father, eldest brother, I want to see piercing darts." Every time Jing Chu would be scared till her face turned pale, but she would unswervingly stand by her side and would often feel disgusted after watching. Shen Miao was never tired of it, as if she felt comfortable when Jing Chu felt disgusted. Over time, everyone in the courtyard could see that Shen Miao was deliberately messing with Jing Chu. Chapter 302. Shen Xian and the rest did not understand, but when they saw Shen Miao throwing a temper, they thought that it was most likely a disagreement between young ladies. As men, it was not good for them to directly intervene in young ladies' matters, so they let Shen Miao do as she wished. Most likely she was very curious today and could not help but ask. "It is not that I do not like her," Shen Miao said. Just as the words were spoken, Jingzhe, who was at the side, spoke. "Young lady like to be quiet." That Biao young lady and Biao young master would often come over to talk to young lady, especially Biao young master, who would chat with young lady. Young lady do not like to talk to strangers, so it seems that she is somewhat annoyed. Jingzhe said those words with a serious expression, and Shen Miao could not help but turn back to look at her. Shen Xian's and Luo Shuiyan's expression suddenly changed. On the surface, Jingzhe's words seemed that Shen Miao was annoyed with the Jing siblings, but in fact there were many meanings in her words. A Biao young master would often come over to talk to Biao younger sister, and had some skills in pestering others. Luo Shuiyan said angrily, "What exactly does your nephew mean? For quell your anger." Shen Xian quickly comforted and then said to Shen Qiu, "Brat, you have arranged so many guards in the courtyard but did not discover that your younger sister is pestered by those cats and dogs every day?" Shen Qiu felt wronged. "I really did not discover it." Naturally, Shen Qiu would not be able to discover it because the places that Jing Guanshang chose to meet with Shen Miao were not in the courtyard, or at the residence's entrance, or in the garden or in the corridor. In short, one could meet anywhere at any time. "Go and guard the courtyard entrance for me. If you see those two siblings again, just say that the courtyard is closed for sword practice and no one is allowed to enter." Shen Xian roared. Shen Qiu immediately went to pick people. Luo Shuiyan touched Shen Miao's head. "Jiao, in the future if that person comes to pester you again, do not be polite with them. Beat him up." Shen Xian. And after Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xian returned to the sword practice grounds, Shen Miao then lightly swept a glance at Jingzhe. "You talk too much? This servant knows her mistake, but young lady." Jingzhe lowered her head. "It is obvious that Biao young master has ill intentions towards you, and you have already seen it. Why did you not tell master and Furen?" "Jing Guanshang is an astute person." Shen Miao smiled gently. "It is a pity for an astute person to be crippled like this. I still have use for this person. However," she changed the topic, "after what you've said today, I think some things will speed up. Let's wait and see." Ever since Shen Qiu instructed people to place a group of guards at the western courtyard's entrance, to strictly guard against Jing Chu and Jing Guanshang, the western courtyard became much quieter. Without the two siblings disturbing her, Shen Miao was much more at ease. However, while it was peaceful on their end, some people were anxious. In Rongjing Tang, old Shen Foren's sharp eyes stared at Jing Chu, as if the previous affection was just an illusion. She said, "Chu, what exactly did you do? Why can't I even enter the eldest master's courtyard now?" Jing Chu lowered her head somewhat angrily and said softly, "One do not know why, but fifth younger sister seems to be very guarded against me. Biao older brother actually treats me very well, but fifth younger sister would make him alienate me." The guards at the courtyard entrance were also set up by fifth younger sister. "It is fifth girl again." Old Shen Foren was so angry that her face turned green. Zhang Mama, who was beside her, quickly patted her chest and comforted, Old foreign, please calm down. That girl is so smart. Forget about your older brother. Now even you are guarded to this extent. I am angered to death. Old Shen Foreign's original intention was to hope that Jing Guanshang and Jing Chuchu would deal with Shen Miao and Shen Qiu respectively. But Shen Miao was after all a female, and in matters between men and women, once something happened, the one to suffer would always be the female. With Shen Xian's and Luo Shuiyan's violent temper, one could not predict what would happen. If it was Shen Qiu, the one to suffer would be Jing Chuchu, as the reason would always be on their side. In the past, the people of the Western Courtyard were carefree, and they were all people who fought on the battlefield and would never fuss over these small matters. Those who were used to holding swords and spears would not pay attention to such small matters. Who knew that this time the Western Courtyard style of doing things had changed, and they directly locked the courtyard doors. Chapter 303. Old Furen. Zhang Mama muttered. Fifth young lady's attitude. One fear that she is already suspicious of Biao young lady. One fear that it would be somewhat difficult to proceed step by step. When Jing Chuchu heard this, her heart was even more ashamed and angry. She felt that she was born beautiful and intelligent, and in her generation in Suzhou, even the gentleman Wang's son would eat her soft and weak appearance. Who knew that she would hit a wall here in Shanqiu? And one did not know how sullen her heart was. Your meaning is? Old Shen Foreign frowned. Severe illness requires strong medicine. Zhang Mama reminded. If this continues to drag on, it would be too late after eldest master has decided which noble young lady's marriage with eldest young master. Old Shen Foreign quivered and immediately said, What you said is right. By that time it would be too late. She looked at Jing Chuchu and a loving smile appeared on her face, but that smile in the eyes of others was completely fake. She said, Chuchu, do you want to marry Qiu or not? Jing Chuchu hung her head down and said, Want? In order to marry Qiu, are you willing to do anything? Jing Chuchu was surprised for a moment and vaguely guessed something, and her heart could not help but jump up. She was able to handle the affairs of males with ease, and her delicate and pitiful posture made her able to easily hook the hearts of the young masters of wealthy families in Suzhou. But the Shen family was the residence of the formidable great general, and Shan Qiu was the son of the formidable great general. Naturally she was moved, even though she had never done such a thing before, but after hearing old Shen Foreign's words, it was as if a lot of shining gold and silver appeared in front of her. She clenched her fists and softly said, Chu is willing. Old Shen Foreign smiled in satisfaction. For the next few days the Shen residence was much quieter. Jing Chuchu and Jing Guanshang stayed in the courtyard at the back of Rongjing Tang, and no one knew what they were fiddling about in the house, but did not go out at all. On this day when Shen Miao went out to the corridor, she coincidentally met Jing Chuchu. Jing Chuchu was wearing a moon-white line jacket and an emerald-colored skirt, looking like a pretty daughter of a humble family. In the Ding capital, this kind of young lady from Suzhou had a unique flavor, enough to make passers-by stop. Fifth younger sister. Jing Chuchu bowed to her. Shen Miao smiled gently. Where is Biao older sister going? It was rare for Shan Miao to speak to Jing Chuchu, and Jing Chuchu was surprised for a moment before saying, Return to the room to do some embroidery. She shyly lowered her head. Anyway, there is nothing to do. Since there is nothing, then why not go out with me? Shen Miao said, I am just about to go to the jeweler shop to pick some jewelry. If you do not mind, you can also go and pick together. Jing Chuchu was really stunned this time. Shen Miao had always treated her lukewarm, and no matter how she tried to get close to her, it was not possible. But today for the first time she was willing to bring her out. Jing Chu Gutong, master of Tong Tongfang, had seen in fangs that Wu Miao Long Wu. But when he heard that Shen Miao was going to a jewelry shop, his eyes immediately lit up. She carefully sized up Shen Miao. Shen Miao was wearing a snow-green colored crane embroidered cloud embroidered skirt, and on her upper body was a xiang-colored armor. She always wore dark colors, but it did not make her look old-fashioned at all. Instead, it made her complexion look like jade and had a pressing noble air. Jing Chuchu was secretly jealous in her heart. She thought that her appearance was not inferior to Shen Miao's, but when she stood with Shan Miao, she inevitably felt ashamed of her inferiority. Shen Miao was naturally noble, and with one look, one could tell that she came from a small family. The more one was jealous, the more one would yearn. Jing Chu-Chu's gaze landed on the lotus flower pearl hairpin on Shen Miao's head. That pearl was big and round, and the slightly flickering luster almost dazzled Jing Chu-Chu's eyes. She quickly lowered her head, so that her greedy eyes would not be seen by the other. Jing Chu-Chu said, "Since fifth younger sister has no one to accompany, then I will go along." Chapter 304. Bai Lu and Shuangjiang walked behind, and a trace of contempt flashed in their eyes at the same time. She was after all from a small family, and her eyesight was very shallow. Just a little jewelry was able to lead her by the nose. No wonder Shen Miao said that Jing Chu-Chu was not a person to be feared. Both of them left the residence and rode the horse carriage towards the Ding capital. Shen Qiu naturally let a group of guards follow, and it was very impressive. When they reached the treasure pavilion, Shen Miao casually picked a few jewelry, but it was Jing Chu-Chu who held one and touched that one. She was so fond of it that it made the shopkeeper somewhat cast sidelong glances. In all fairness, Jing Chu-Chu's looks were not bad. Especially the Suzhou females were born soft like water, which was different from the females in the capital. But this small family style had greatly reduced her beauty. After all, one could not just rely on one's face to be popular in the Ding capital. Seeing Jing Chu-Chu like this, Shen Miao was not stingy and paid for the few items that she fancied. Jing Chu-Chu felt that she was much closer to Shen Miao, and when it was nearing noon, Shen Miao said, "Let us eat outside today. After picking for the entire morning, one is somewhat hungry. Most likely you have not come to Kuaihualu in the Ding capital, as ordinary people do not have such good fortune." Jing Chu-Chu looked at the grand restaurant in front of her, and there was some yearning in her eyes. Today Shen Miao was picking jewelry and buying fabrics, and Jing Chu-Chu had never seen such extravagant spending before. So for a moment she felt dizzy. It was because of this that she felt that the Shen residence was wealthy, and was determined to enter the Shen family. When they reached the restaurant and sat down, Shen Miao picked a seat by the window on the second floor. The waiter reported some dishes, and Shen Miao picked a few. The few dishes that she ordered were all Kuaihualu's signature dishes, which made Jing Chu-Chu stunned. After the waiter left, Shen Miao then said to Jing Chu-Chu, "The people who come here to eat are all rich and noble. Many of them are high-ranking officials in the Ding capital, and must not be underestimated." Jing Chu-Chu nodded her head repeatedly. Shen Miao gently smiled and picked up the tea to drink, but her hand accidentally shook, and the teacup fell onto her body, and most of the tea splashed onto her skirt. Jing Chu-Chu jumped in shock. "Fifth younger sister? Nothing." Shen Miao waved her hands and stood up. "There is a place to change clothes here, and there are still some clothes in the carriage. I will go and change now, wait for me here." Finishing, he called out to Bai Lu and Shuangjiang, "Let's go." When she left, those Shen residence's guards also followed, and Jing Chu-Chu quickly shouted, "Fifth younger sister, these guards?" She was still somewhat afraid. "Don't worry. In broad daylight, no one would dare to make things difficult for you," Shen Miao said. "Moreover, the guests here are all people of status and would not do anything." Her expression was gentle, but her tone was unquestionable. Jing Chu-Chu subconsciously did not refute, and by the time she recovered to her senses, Shen Miao had already brought the group of guards far away. Jing Chu-Chu's expression darkened. Shen Miao would always have a high and mighty attitude in front of her, and this kind of attitude made Jing Chu-Chu clearly aware of the disparity between her and herself, making her feel even more unreconciled. Moreover, she heard from the people of the Shen residence that Shen Miao was previously a stupid and ignorant idiot. Why was it that a person who did not know anything about the four arts was able to occupy the position of the daughter of the first household of the Shen family? Shen Exan and wife were also obedient to her, and even let Shen Miao pick first without a second word when His Majesty bestowed them. One would always be jealous because of comparison, and now when Jing Chu-Chu looked at Shen Miao, she was so jealous that she went crazy. She picked up the teacup in front of her but copied Shen Miao's actions and sipped it in small mouthfuls, as if by doing so, she would be able to get some of Shen Miao's air of nobility. Just at this moment, a group of people walked past her and sat down at the table beside her. The person at the front was a young man who was refined and dressed in brocade clothes. Even the servants behind him were dressed in exquisite fabrics. Chapter 305. Thinking of what Shen Miao said just now, Those who come here are either rich or noble. Jing Chuchu's heart suddenly moved. That young man also seemed to have noticed her and looked over. When he saw Jing Chuchu's appearance, his eyes could not help but brighten. Jing Chuchu's white coat matched with a small emerald skirt, snow-white skin and flower-like appearance. The most important thing was that gentle and timid manner. When she looked at that young man, she quickly lowered her head in shock. Most of the females in the Ding capital were in the imperial city, so they were generous and decent in their actions, but it was rare to see such a delicate and timid Jiangnan young lady. That young man's eyes were somewhat dazed, and the more eager his gaze was, the deeper Jing Chuchu's head lowered. Time slowly passed by and the dishes were all served, but Shen Miao did not come over for a long time, so there was only Jing Chuchu sitting alone at the table. It was not good for her to eat alone, so she held the teacup and took small sips, looking somewhat at a loss as to what to do. Finally, that wealthy gentleman at the neighboring table could not bear it any longer, and under everyone's eyes, he walked over and sat opposite Jing Chuchu and asked softly, "Seeing that young lady has been waiting here for a long time, is it because you are waiting for someone?" Jing Chuchu jumped in shock, and when she raised her head to see the other person, her face immediately turned red and she lowered her head to whisper, I am waiting for my Biao younger sister." That gentleman asked with concern, "Why is young lady's Biao younger sister still not here? How can young lady be left alone?" Jing Chuchu blushed and shook her head, as if she wanted to say something but dared not say it. In the eyes of others, it was as if she was being bullied. That gentleman's heart settled and said, "Since I have nothing to do, why not wait here with young lady? No need to trouble." Jing Chuchu quickly said, "There is no need for gentlemen to, no harm." That person said with a smile, "You are sitting here alone, and if someone with ill intentions were to come over, one fear that there would be a lot of trouble. It would be better for me to accompany you here." His words were gentle and there was a refined smile on his face, making it easy for others to have a good impression of him. Jing Chuchu lowered her head and said, "Many thanks to gentlemen. Young lady does not look like someone from the Ding capital." He asked, "I am from Suzhou," Jing Chuchu said. Both of them spoke one sentence at a time. That young person was very good with words, and with just a few sentences, he coaxed Jing Chuchu to smile. Even though she looked somewhat shy, her attitude towards that person gradually became closer. That young person talked about his own anecdotes, and it seemed that he had been to many places and his family was quite rich. As such, Jing Chuchu's smile deepened. In another private room of Kuai Hualu, one could see Jing Chuchu's table clearly through the carved window. Bai Lu said, "Biao young lady can actually talk for so long with an unknown man." Her words were filled with disdain. "That's not an ordinary man." Shen Miao supported her chin with one hand and said lightly, "Does young lady know that gentleman?" Shuangjiang asked curiously. The guards in the room were also somewhat astonished. Shen Miao left Jing Chuchu alone there and changed a place to sit alone. It seemed that it was to let Jing Chuchu talk to that male. Now listening to Shen Miao's meaning, she knew that male? Shen Miao smiled gently but did not speak. "I say." At the other end, in one of the rooms in Kuai Hualu, Ji Yushu's eyeballs almost fell out. Could it be that she knows Sun Kainan? Even though Sun Kainan is Sun Tianzhang's only son, he did not enter officialdom and was raised in the residence as a prodigal son who only knew how to eat, drink and play. He did not even go to Guangwen Tang before, so how did Shen Miao know him? Gao Yang glanced at him. Chapter 306. Could it be that you believe that this is a coincidence? Ji Yushu said agitatedly, "How is this a coincidence? Even a fool can see that Shen young lady deliberately let Sun Kainan meet her Biao older sister who came out of nowhere. When did I say it was a coincidence?" Gao Yang unfolded his folding fan with a pov sound and waved it, "But I think she not only knows Sun Kainan, she even knows which seat Sun Kainan likes to sit in. Don't you find it strange?" Gao Yang touched his chin. "Shen Miao is just an unmarried young lady, but why does it seem that she is more powerful than you by Xiaoshang? She knows everything we know and don't know. I really wonder if she knows anything we don't know." "Stop slandering by Xiaoshang," Ji Yushu retorted. "Shen young lady is not an ordinary person. You and I have been monitoring young Miss Shan's whereabouts all day. If Xie Sangu were to find out, He would definitely scold us for being too idle. Spying on her is much more interesting than other things. Gao Yang looked at Jing Chu, who was chatting happily with Sun Kainan outside, and asked, "Why don't you guess what is her motive for doing this?" Ji Yushu seriously thought about it. She wants to be a matchmaker for Sun Kainan and her Biao older sister? When have you ever seen Shen Miao so kind? Gao Yang did not hesitate to pour cold water on him. Then tell me what is going on. Ji Yushu was discouraged. Does the Minister of the Ministry of Personnel have any dealings with the Shen family recently? Gao Yang propped his chin with his fan and pondered. In Kuaihua Upper Building, Jing Chu and Sun Kainan talked for a long time, and the more they talked, the more congenial they became. If one did not know, one would think that they were a pair of celestial couple. After a while, one saw a few Shen residence guards walking to Jing Chu's side and said, "Biao young lady's clothes do not fit," and had lost her interest. She had already paid the shopkeeper and left first. "Please ask your subordinates to protect Lady Biao. After Lady Biao finishes eating, send Lady Biao back to the mansion." Jing Chu was somewhat surprised. Fifth younger sister went back first? The guard nodded. How can fifth Shen young lady leave you alone like this? Sun Kainan felt it was unfair. He already knew from Jing Chu's mouth that the Biao younger sister that he was waiting for was the fifth young lady of the Shen residence, Shan Miao. Sun Kainan did not know much about Shan Miao, and only knew that she was an idiot that chased after Prince Ding. Now it seemed that not only was Shen Miao an idiot, she also liked to bully others. He wanted to be someone who had tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex, so how would Jing Chu waste his kind intentions? She immediately hung her head down and said uneasily, "Then I will return now." "Sai, how can we do that?" Sun Kainan immediately said, "If we go back now, wouldn't it be a waste of this table full of good dishes? Kuaihua Lu's wine and dishes have never been thrown away like this before." He looked at Jing Chu, who was at a loss, and said with a smile, "How about this? If young lady does not mind, this one is willing to accompany young lady for a meal." He acted like a gentleman. "So many of your guards are here. How about they send you back after you finish eating?" Jing Chu was somewhat at a loss. "Since we met, both of us are fated. Since we are fated, then one must not waste the fate that the heavens gave." That Sun Kainan opened his mouth and said with a glib tongue, "When this one saw young lady today, there was a feeling of seeing an old friend, thus one wanted to talk with young lady. One do not know if young lady is willing to give face and accept this suggestion of this one." After hesitating for a long while, Jing Chu finally nodded her head hesitantly. Then, according to gentleman's words, both of them then started to really eat and talk together. In the faraway compartment, Shen Miao looked at that pair of people and a sneer slowly floated on her lips. She was familiar with Sun Kainan. In the previous lifetime, it was this person who made Shen Qiu wear a big green hat. Shen Qiu was young and impetuous and dragged a crippled leg to kill that person in one breath. But at the end, she then found out that Sun Kainan was the only son of the Minister of Personnel. It was because this Sun Kainan was ignorant and incompetent and usually relied on his mouth and good looks to hook up females everywhere. No matter if it was a young female or a woman, he would eat them all up. Sun Tianzheng was afraid that the imperial censor would report him and normally did not allow Sun Kainan to go out, so there were only a few people who knew Sun Kainan. But in this lifetime, even if Sun Kainan turned into ashes, she would still recognize him. Sun Kainan liked the weak Jiangnan females the most. Otherwise he would not have the guts to sleep with Shan Qiu's woman in the previous lifetime. Shen Miao's eyes drooped down and muttered in a voice that only she could hear, "Sun Kainan, Jing Chu. Ben Gong personally pulled up this previous lifetime's ill-fated fate for you. Do not let it down." Chapter 307. When Jing Chu and Shen Miao went out, she returned alone, and it seemed that she did not attract much attention in the Shen residence. But on this night, Shen Miao unexpectedly came to Old Foreign Side Courtyard and personally came to talk to Jing Chu. Coincidentally, Jing Chu was fiddling with the jewelry on the table, and among those jewelry, there was a jade bracelet that was particularly dazzling. The color was so transparent that it was almost transparent, and the entire piece of jade was of excellent quality. This jade bracelet would cost at least 100 taels of silver, and Jing Chu would definitely not be able to buy it herself. But when Shun Miao was at the treasure pavilion yesterday, she bought some jewelry for Jing Chu, and there was no such jade bracelet. When Shun Miao entered the room, she stared at the jade bracelet and Jing Chu jumped in shock before quickly putting it back into the box in a flurry. Shun Miao smiled gently. Biao older sister's jade bracelet looks like it is not an ordinary item. Jing Chu softly asked, "Does fifth younger sister know about this bracelet?" One had seen a similar imported product, but the quality was not as good as yours. Even so, at that time it was sold for 500 taels of silver. One feared that Biao older sister's bracelet would cost 1,000 taels of silver. Shun Miao casually made up a story. Even though this jade bracelet was precious, it was not worth 1,000 taels of silver. There were many better jewelry that could be bought with 1,000 taels of silver, but with Jing Chu's horizons, even if she exaggerated it, Jing Chu would not doubt it. "But Biao older sister, this jade bracelet is so precious. Where did it come from?" Shun Miao asked. "One had never seen you wear it before." It is a gift from a friend," Jing Chu whispered. A flash of understanding appeared in Shun Miao's eyes. Sun Kainan not only relied on his good looks and flowery words to make females happy, he was also willing to throw money. Otherwise Jing Chu, who was already a deputy general's wife in the previous lifetime, would not have an affair. It was the first time they met and he gave such a big gift. For Jing Chu, who had not seen the world, it would be hard for her not to be moved. "It seems that this friend must treat Biao older sister very well," Shun Miao said. Jing Chu's face turned red and looked at Shun Miao. "What matter is fifth younger sister coming over for?" Shun Miao slowly tidied up her clothes before saying, "Heard that Biao older sister was sent back by someone today?" I met a kind-hearted young master." Jing Chu was somewhat shocked. "He has good intentions and I dare not refuse, but we have always abided by etiquette. Biao older sister need not be nervous." Shun Miao smiled gently. "Does Biao older sister know who that person is?" Jing Chu was surprised. "Who is it?" "It is the only son of the Minister of Personnel Sun Tianzheng Darren, Sun Kainan," Shun Miao said. Jing Chu looked at Shun Miao and her eyes were filled with surprise. Shun Miao sneered in her heart. Sun Tianzheng was too strict with Sun Kainan. Sun Kainan went around seducing females but rarely revealed his identity, unless it was to bring that young lady into the residence as a concubine. Towards Jing Chu, one feared that she did not reveal her true identity. Jing Chu most likely thought that Sun Kainan was just a son of a rich family, and now knowing Sun Kainan's real identity, how could Jing Chu, who wanted to climb up to the dragon and the phoenix, let him go? Biao older sister also know that the Minister of Personnel is a very high official. Shun Miao smiled gently. "The residence is not much worse than us. The most important thing is that Sun Darren only has one son, Gentleman Sunday. For a person of his status to actually send Biao older sister back to the residence, could it be that?" Shun Miao lightly said. "He somewhat likes Biao older sister? Fifth younger sister do not speak nonsense." Jing Chu quickly refuted, but her cheeks quickly turned red, and her eyes became somewhat erratic. Obviously Shun Miao's words had caused some waves in her heart. She whispered, "Gentleman's son and I are innocent." Chapter 308. "I did not say that there is anything between the both of you." Shun Miao smiled. "A fair and graceful lady is a gentleman's desire. Biao older sister is born beautiful, and it is natural for Gentleman Wang and Sun to be pleased. But Gentleman Sun is indeed a good person. He has a dignified appearance and a rich family background. If anyone could be his wife, they would be the matriarch of the entire Minister of State's residence. After all, Sun Darren only has this one son." Jing Chu pursed her lips and did not speak. Shun Miao stood up and smiled. "I only came over to casually say it. Biao older sister must not take it to heart. Most of the matters in this world depend on fate. If there is really fate, one would not know what the situation would be in the future. At that time, Biao older sister would definitely be able to stay in the Ding capital forever." Finishing speaking, Shun Miao turned around and walked out. Jing Chu sat alone in the room and she subconsciously took out that smooth jade bracelet from the box and reached out to caress the lines on it. She did not think that Sun Kainan was actually the son of the Minister of Personnel. As for why he did not say his identity, it was most probably like what was written in the opera. He did not hope that she would be close to him because of his family background. Did this not mean that Sun Kai-nan treated her sincerely? Otherwise, why would he give out a bracelet that was worth 1,000 liang the moment they met? In all fairness, Jing Chu-chu was after all from a small family. Even though there were many princes and grandsons chasing after her in Suzhou City, but compared to Sun Kai-nan's actions in front of her, those were just small fries. She had seen the prosperity of the Ding capital, and was even more unwilling to return to Suzhou. Now Shen Miao's last sentence had moved her heart. If she were to marry Sun Kai-nan, she would be able to stay in the Ding capital forever. But what about old Shen Furen's side? Outside, Shen Miao had just stepped out of the courtyard when she met Jing Guansheng. When Jing Guansheng saw her, his eyes lit up and he smiled. Is Biao younger sister here to see Chu-Chu? Shen Miao nodded her head. Biao younger sister is getting closer to Chu-Chu now. Jing Guansheng wanted to go forward, but Jing Zhe and Guyu were guarding in front of him like they were guarding against lechers. Jing Guansheng was a refined person, so it was not good for him to approach with a drooling face. No harm. We are all one family. Shen Miao smiled gently and no longer looked at Jing Guansheng as she walked out of the courtyard. Guyu whispered, "Does young lady wish to be a matchmaker for Biao young lady and gentleman's son?" Just now Shen Miao kept on saying that Sun Kai-nan was good, and when the two maids heard it, it was exceptionally strange as they felt that it was very similar to a matchmaker. "When did you see me being so kind-hearted?" Shen Miao said expressionlessly. Then why? Guyu was even more puzzled. One must disturb Biao older sister's heart. Shen Miao smiled faintly. Old Foreign and Biao older sister previously had the same goal, so both of them were naturally close, but if they did not seek the same thing, what do you think will happen? Jingzhe was quick-witted. Dog biting dog. She immediately reacted and said in a panic, "I didn't say they were dogs. I can't read. What you said is not wrong." Shen Miao said, "The saying of dog biting dog is quite good. Also, for the next few days, go and build a good relationship with Rong Jingtang's Fuer." Fuer? Shen Miao was surprised. Old Foreign wanted to marry her to the housekeeper's son who is blind in one eye. Shen Miao said, "Fuer is very unwilling." Heavens! Jingzhe was stunned. Fuer has been by Old Foreign's side since young. How? Even the cats and dogs that were raised would have some feelings, so why would a young lady in her prime of life be married to a one-eyed man? Fuer did things quickly, and even though his mouth was fierce, he was loyal and devoted to old Shen Furen. Old Shen Furen had obtained the housekeeper's annual land profits, so naturally there must be some expression. If one is not willing to fork out money, then one will have to use people. One can only blame that Fuer's life is not good but was born well. Chapter 309. That young lady is planning to help Fuer? Guyu carefully asked, but there was a strange feeling in her heart. Shen Miao did not care much about the people of Rong Jingtang, and now she was not a person with a bodhisattva's heart. She felt that it was somewhat impossible to help Fuer. Of course help. Shen Miao said in a calm and composed manner. Every mistake that Old Foreign makes is our opportunity. Young lady want to bribe Fuer? Jingzhe asked, but will Fuer be bribed? Fuer used to be the most loyal to Old Foreign. If loyalty is not rewarded, then the power to change sides would be greater. When the dog that is raised by one side goes crazy, then it would bite the owner the most painful. Shen Miao said lightly. For a few days, the Shun residents passed by peacefully. Jing Chu-chu no longer hung around the western courtyard, but often brought a few guards of the Shun residents out to go shopping, saying that she wanted to see the liveliness of the Ding capital. Naturally no one stopped her, and for the people of the western courtyard, they could not wait for Jing Chu-chu to go out every day so that the guards at the entrance of the western courtyard could relax a little. But the clothes that Jing Chu-chu was wearing were getting richer by the day. Even though old Shen Foreign also gave the Jing siblings money, but because of her stingy identity, she would not give too much. Jing Chu-chu was dressed in such a luxurious manner that even Shen Yu felt surprised, but when asked, Jing Chu-chu said that it was money that she brought from her own family. Even Jing Guansheng's hands were a lot more relaxed, and the amount of money that he gave to the servants in the Shen residence had increased. Everyone said that it was because the Jing siblings came to the Ding capital, and their horizons were broadened. The habits of a small family were also restrained and they became more like the people of the Ding capital. The Jing siblings lived comfortably, but naturally there were people in the residence who were not comfortable. In Rongjingtang, old Shenforen looked at Jing Chu in front of her and her eyes flashed. Chu, how are you doing recently? Is there anything that you are not used to in the Ding capital? Thanks to old Foren's blessings, Chu is living very well. Jing Chu said. Since you are living well, then why do you not use the medicine that was given to you until now? Old Shenforen's pair of triangular eyes stared at Jing Chu and her tone was heavy. If one was timid, one would be scared to tears by her ferocious look. Jing Chu, however, lowered her head and her voice did not change at all as she said, Old Foren, Chu is currently unable to get close to Biao older brother and really cannot find a chance. Old Shenforen had long handed the medicinal bag to Jing Chu and only let her find an opportunity to drug Shenxiu, who knew that after so many days, the Shen residence was calm and peaceful and Jing Chu did not even take any action. You are loitering outside all day and only return to the residence late. It would be strange if one could find an opportunity. Old Shenforen could not help but sneer. Chu, are you not willing? If you don't want to, then forget it. Chu is not unwilling. Jing Chu quickly said. These days she would meet with Sun Kainan privately outside, and she pretended not to know of Sun Kainan's identity. Sun Kainan treated her gently and gave her clothes and jewelry. It was because of these things that Sun Kainan gave that Jing Chu hesitated in her heart. Compared to Shenxiu, who had to go to the bitter cold northwestern region and not be seen all year round, marrying Sun Kainan was much more comfortable. But whether Sun Kainan was willing to marry her or not was another question. Jing Chu had been guarding her innocence because she knew the disease of men. Let them see but not be able to touch but not be able to eat until they are not full, then she would be able to firmly hook a man's heart. She had indeed made Sun Kainan head over heels, but Sun Kainan was the son of the Minister of Higher Officials' residence, and she came from a small family. Even if Sun Kainan liked her, Sun Tianzheng would not agree, and she was not willing to be Sun Kainan's concubine. Chapter 310. So Jing Chu hesitated. If it was with Shenxiu, old Shenforen guaranteed that she would be Shenxiu's official wife, but Sun Kainan treated her gently and generously. People's hearts were greedy and would look at what was in the pot when one ate in the bowl. Jing Chu could not make up her mind and did not drug Shenxiu. She did not take action for a long time and old Shenforen became anxious and came to question her. Since you are willing, why do not take action? Old Shenforen asked. Chu want to ensure that nothing goes wrong before taking action. After all, the guards in the western courtyard are tight, and it is difficult for Chu to find an opportunity. If one were to alert the snake, it would be difficult to take action. Chu, I like you. Old Shenforen slowly said. But if you continue to be like this, I will be disappointed. You are so timid and in the future it would be difficult to accomplish anything. Jing Chu lowered her head and agreed. Old Shenforen looked at her and seemed to be somewhat disgusted. You go out. Jing Chu hurriedly retreated out. After Jing Chu left, old Shenforen smashed the cup in front of her and said angrily, things that cannot be seen in public. Zhang Mama instructed the maid to pick up the fragments on the floor and comforted softly. Old Foren need not be anxious. Most likely Biao young lady is a little timid. A young lady would have some scruples when doing this kind of thing. How can I not be anxious? Old Shenforen said in a flustered and exasperated manner. Yuan'er had already said yesterday that eldest family has been looking for a young lady for Shenxiu. If it is really settled, it would be impossible to take action in the future. I originally saw that Jing Chu was an ambitious person, so I helped her, but who knew that mud cannot hold up a wall? Zhang Mama patted old Shenforen's chest to calm her down. Biao young lady is still young. Moreover, what Biao young lady said is somewhat reasonable. Now eldest master's family is on guard, and if one does not beat the grass and alert the snake, it would be bad if all the faces were torn. Then what do you say? Old Shenforen said in a bad mood. Now that time is pressing and that girl is not willing to take action. One cannot just watch Shenxiu marry a noble young lady, right? Old Foren. Zhang Mama pondered for a moment. Biao young lady is young and it is somewhat risky for her to do it. Why not let our people do it? Our people. Old Shen Foreign looked at her. Not bad. Mrs. Zhang said. Our people will naturally be more thorough than Miss Biao. When the time comes, even if something goes wrong, we can get Miss Biao out of it and leave a way out. However, I don't think there will be any problems. This matter has been done by us in the past, so it should be as easy as flipping our hands. Old Shen Foreign's eyes slightly moved and was silent for a moment before suddenly saying, What you said is not wrong. Since that girl does not dare to take action, then let others help her. Call Fuer and Xier in. Naturally, no one knew about Rong Jingtong's change in mind. However, whether or not the people who knew would spread the news was another matter. However, on the surface, everything seemed to be developing in an orderly manner. This day when Shen Miao was returning to the western courtyard, she coincidentally bumped into Shen Yuan. Ever since Jing Chu and Chu siblings came to the Shen residence, one did not know what Shen Yuan was busy with and rarely saw others. Upon returning to the Ding capital, Shen Gui was naturally unhappy that he left early and returned late. He thought that Shen Yuan was deliberately avoiding him because of Ren Wanyun's matter, and quarreled with Shen Yuan a few times before parting on bad terms. It was just that these quarrels did not affect Shen Yuan, as he still did not appear in the residence as usual. At the end they met here. Seeing Shen Miao, Shen Yuan slowed down his footsteps and greeted, Fifth younger sister. Chapter 311. Second older brother. Heard that fifth younger sister is recently close to Biao younger brother and Biao younger sister. Shen Yuan smiled. Did you just return from Biao younger brother's place? He deliberately mentioned Jing Guanshang, as if hinting that there was something between Shen Miao and Jing Guanshang. Bai Lu's and Shuangzhang's brows wrinkled as Shen Yuan's words did not sound good. Shen Miao swept a glance at Shen Yuan and did not answer his words. It seems that second older brother just returned from second Shen's place. One heard that recently second Shen's illness has decreased a lot. Is it going to be better soon? Ran Wanyun had not appeared for a long time, and all the matters of the second household were handed over to Wan Yinyang to handle. Even old Shen Foreign, who had always looked down on Wan Yinyang, did not say anything. Everyone in the Shen residence was well aware that it was impossible for Ran Wanyun to be as glorious as the first half of her life. Moreover, Ran Wanyun's maiden family were only wealthy merchants, and no matter how much money they had, they did not have any power and could not help much. Shen Yuan's expression paused for a moment and sized her up before smiling. Fifth younger sister's complexion looks good recently. Is there a happy event approaching? Because of the return of Shen Xian and wife, Shen Qiu would change his ways to please Shen Miao every day. The current Shen Miao was no longer that dull little girl in the past. Once her temperament was good and her complexion was good, at least no matter where she was placed, she would not be ignored by others. How would I have any good things? It is second older brother who seems to be very busy these days. Perhaps there is a good thing approaching. Shen Miao answered. Hearing that, Shen Yuan's face actually revealed an expression that could be called as happy. He said, Oh? Seen through? In the past there were some troubles and bad luck, but recently second older brother is thinking of ways to disperse them. Seeing that things are going smoothly, most likely he is somewhat happy. He then looked at Shen Miao meaningfully. But fifth younger sister need not belittle yourself. I see that fifth younger sister's good thing is approaching. Shen Miao did not speak. Shen Yuan cupped his hands and said, There are still some matters and will not speak more with fifth younger sister. Farewell. Finishing, he strode away. Bai Lu said angrily, This second young master is really too impolite. Shen Yuan's hostility towards Shen Miao, and those weird words that he said could be heard by anyone. Shen Miao frowned tightly and looked at Shen Yuan's back without speaking. Young lady, Shuangzhang asked worriedly. Shen Miao said, He is somewhat strange. Shen Miao was very clear about Shen Yuan, this person. One should not underestimate him, as he seemed to be indifferent to the matters of the residence but was the most vicious and merciless one. Now Shen Miao could be sure that the previous lifetime Shen Qiu's ending was definitely related to Shen Yuan. Even though Shen Yuan did not know that Shen Miao's arrangements were already misplaced, but those words just now seemed to have revealed some information that Shen Yuan still had a backup plan. Should we let Guard Mo follow second young master? Shuangzhang suggested. No need. Emo Qing still does not have that ability. Shen Miao shook her head. Fu Xiaoyi was not to be feared, but one must be careful of the people behind Fu Xiaoyi. She said, let's wait and see. Upon returning to the western courtyard, just as one stepped into the room, one saw Gu Yu and Jingzhe anxiously waiting in the room. Seeing Shen Miao return, Gu Yu quickly closed the door and pulled Shen Miao to the couch in the inner room to sit down before Jingzhe softly said, Young lady, Fuer from Rongjingtang had passed a message over. How is it? Shen Miao asked. Old Foreign plans to personally take action and arranged for it to happen 2 days later. Jingzhe said angrily, Old Foreign is really too bad. Master and Foreign treat her so well, but she actually schemed against eldest young master. And that Biao young lady, one could tell that she is not a good person. She really does not know shame. All right. Gu Yu interrupted her. Young lady, what do we do now? Chapter 312. Why 2 days later? Shen Miao asked. 2 days later is the family banquet, and coincidentally Second Foreign's close friend will come over to visit Second Foreign. Jingzhe did not finish her words, but there was no doubt about the meaning. Old Shen Foreign wanted to take advantage of the fact that there were so many people around to accuse Shen Qiu of slandering Jing Chuchu's innocence, and wanted Shen Qiu to give an explanation to the young lady in front of everyone. How could Shen Qiu decline? It was the same method as in the previous lifetime. Redoing it again, Old Shen Foreign's method was still not that brilliant. Like this, you give instructions to Fuer. Shen Miao waved her hands and let Jingzhe's ears to whisper a few words. But one still need to find someone to keep an eye on it. Shen Miao said, This matter cannot go wrong. This servant will understand. There was a flash of eagerness in Jingzhe's eyes. This servant will definitely do this matter well. Shen Miao smiled gently. This is a good matter. Do not mess it up for others. It is retribution to spoil one's marriage. She stretched out her 2 hands and gently knocked on the teacup in front of her. Her calm and composed appearance was like that of a high and mighty person. In the night, in a residence that was a few hundred li away from the Ding capital, there was a person sitting in the main hall. The people standing in the hall were all dressed in black robes and long boots, and their neat and uniform appearance was astonishing. The leader cupped his hands and said, This subordinate did not handle the matter well, and the news was sent back. May master punish. Enough. The young man sitting in the main seat waved his hand lazily. He was dressed in a purple robe, and the corners of his robe were embroidered with fine dragon patterns using golden thread. Under the flickering light, the golden dragon looked like it was about to soar into the sky from the flowing purple clouds. He was playing with a female hairpin in his hands, and on that handsome and charming face, even his smile had an evil air, as if he was a frivolous noble young master that walked out from a large clan. But looking at it carefully, that pair of astonishingly drunk peach blossom eyes were like ice and snow, so sober that there was not a trace of emotion. You all cannot hide it. Xie Jingxing said, I did not intend to hide it. It is nothing more than to fight for time. Since the news was sent back, now time is even more pressing. Master. The leading black-clad man frowned. The matters in the Ding capital have not been settled and time is pressing. What does master plan to do? Do not leave any future troubles. He tilted his head and thought for a moment before casually saying, Find a time to settle brother Xie Chongwu. In any case, Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongqiao had the same blood flowing in their bodies, but when Xie Jingxing said it, there was no trace of hesitation, as if he was dealing with a stranger or even a cat or dog. Master? The black-clothed man was stunned and asked hesitantly, For so many years. Master, why? In the past I could not be bothered, but now both of them are restless. Xie Jingxing said, If I do not get rid of them, I will not be at ease when I leave. But Marquis Xie has already brought the 2 of them into officialdom. The man in black said, These days, the 2 brothers have been following Marquis Xie closely. I heard that Marquis Xie has already introduced them to his colleagues in the officialdom, and instructed them to take good care of them. It's not difficult to make a move, but it's hard to avoid alerting others. Xie Ding, this idiot. Xie Jingxing's face sunk and there was a hint of anger in his tone. Unable to accomplish anything but more than spoil things, he directly called out the Marquis of Linan's name, but the people below were not surprised at all, as if it was a very natural thing. The black-clothed man coughed lightly. Because Master has not entered officialdom for a long time. Marquis Xie is afraid that there will be no successor, so he let the two of them take over. It was not the first or second day that Xie Jingxing's character was unruly and mischievous, and it seemed that Xie Ding was really helpless against Xie Jingxing. Else, with the Marquis of Linan's mind being so biased, how would he give up Xie Jingxing and let the Xie Chongwu brothers take over his mantle? Forget it. Xie Jingxing frowned. Delay the matter of the residence of the Marquis of Linan. As for the residence of the princess, from today onwards, send people to secretly protect Princess Rong Exine. Master. The black-clothed man hesitated for a moment and seemed to have made up his mind before ruthlessly saying, since it will be like this in the future, it is better to draw a line with Princess Rong Exine now. When is it your turn to teach me how to do things? Xie Jingxing lightly swept a glance at him, and the latter immediately kept quiet as he felt a chill down his spine. In the next moment the voice above was heard. Whether I do it or not is my business. Whether she appreciates it or not is her business. I have already done my utmost benevolence. His words contained a hint of indifference and ruthlessness. Coupled with his peerlessly handsome face, it gave off a kind of terror that made one shudder in fear. He stood up and the corner of his robe slightly swayed on the seat. In the flowing golden light, he said, act according to the plan. Fight for time in the Ding capital. One heard that Xin Yuan had already collected most of the evidence. The black-clothed man said, one feared that after the end of the year, Xin Yuan's evidence would be completely searched, and at that time the Shen family would be the first to be cut. Quite good. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders. If Xin Yuan has any difficult matters, you can help secretly. But Xin Yuan is Prince Ding's people. The black-clothed man reminded. Of course I know that he is Prince Ding's people. Xie Jingxing waved his hands. I only let the Shen family block for us. Chapter 313. The Shen family banquet was set for 2 days later. The banquet was suggested by old Shen Foreign herself, but every year the banquet was handled by Ran Wanyun, and this year's banquet could only be handed over to Chan Roqiu. Now that the authority of the Shen residence was in Chan Roqiu's hands, old Shen Foreign felt that she had given Chan Roqiu a huge face but did not know that this job that looked glamorous on the outside was actually unspeakably bitter. In Qiu Shui Yuan, Chan Roqiu sat in front of the table with one hand holding an account book and the other clumsily working on an abacus. The two maids standing behind her spoke. Foreign, you have been calculating for the entire morning. It is better to take a break. The money does not match up. Chan Roqiu shook her head in distress. Tomorrow this sum of money will have to be paid out of my own pocket. As she spoke, there was a trace of anger on her face. Chan Roqiu boasted that she was a noble young lady from a scholarly family and was aloof and proud, so she could not stand to be covered with the stench of money. In the beginning, when old Shen Foreign handed over the authority of the Shan household to Ran Wanyun, it was not that she was not jealous, but she could not put down her face to fight for it. Thus a knot was left in her heart. After so many years of hardship, she was able to become the matriarch of the Shen family, but at this time she discovered that the authority of the Shen household was not that easy to grasp. Ran Wanyun was born a wealthy merchant, and on normal days when old Shen Foreign needed to spend more money, Ran Wanyun could at most deduct some from her dowry, since Ran Wanyun was not lacking in money. But the Chen family were only civil officials, and to put it nicely, they were uncorrupted, but to put it bluntly, they were poor, so how would they be able to take out more money to subsidize? Chan Roqiu thought that by taking over the authority of the Shen household, she would be able to allocate some money to subsidize the household. Now looking at it, Ran Wanyun had earned a lot over the years, and many of the money in the accounts did not match up. Now that there was going to be a family banquet, there was not enough money. It was still all right in the past, as Shen Xian's side received generous rewards from the palace and there was a lot of surplus. But now that the relationship between Shen Xian and the Shen family was stiff and there was no thought of subsidizing the public finances, Chan Roqiu only felt a headache. Obviously one knows that the public finances are not enough, but old Foreign is still holding a family banquet at this time. Is this not bullying Foreign? Chan Roqiu's maid Shirqing was indignant for her. The great master also intends to leave her in the lurch. Madam doesn't have enough money. Why don't you ask the master for some? Hua Yi also said. What nonsense are you talking about? Chan Roqiu said. Master's salary is not even enough to bribe the officials. How can one let him take out money? She said. Let me think about what to do. Shen Yuan wholeheartedly wanted to climb up the official career ladder. But Shen Gui was different. Shen Gui was too ambitious. He didn't have any abilities and only knew how to curry favor with the public. On the other hand, Shen Yuan climbed up step by himself. Although his pace was slower, it was more steady than Shen Gui's. Chan Roqiu had always known that she did not give birth to a son, and could only rely on Shen Yuan's love for her in the second household. Therefore, in order to control Shen Yuan, she had to be gentle and careful. If she could not even settle the matter of money at home, wouldn't Shen Yuan be annoyed? With Shen Yuan's qualifications, there were many women outside who wanted to enter the second branch. How could she let herself be at a disadvantage? Moreover, this bit of money is not for nothing. Chan Roqiu's eyes flashed. If there is some harvest, it is worth it. Foreign's meaning is, Chan Roqiu smiled. It is somewhat strange for old Tai Tai to hold a family banquet at this time. Moreover, I heard that in the past few days, that Suzhou Biao young lady liked to run over to the western courtyard. As Chan Roqiu spoke, there was a trace of disgust in her eyes. Old Tai Tai's move is really inferior, but, coincidentally, I also do not like Shen Qiu. Chan Roqiu did not like Shen Yuan and similarly did not like Shen Qiu. If one were to say that there was some fear towards Shen Yuan, then Shen Qiu was really looked down upon. She herself was unable to give birth to a son, so she could not bear to see other families' outstanding sons. As for Shan Qiu, Chan Roqiu only felt that he was a boorish person who only knew how to wield swords and spears, so how could he receive so many people's praises? People would want to destroy something because they could not obtain it. Shen Yuan's scheming mind was deep and she dared not make a move. But Shen Qiu was straightforward and sincere, and had never survived in the inner courtyard, so it was much easier to deal with him. The most important thing was that she did not even need to make a move. This time it was old Shen Foreign who made a move, and she only needed to sit and watch the show. Chapter 314. I will go back and write a few more invitations, Chan Roqiu said. Find someone to send the invitations to the various Furin's residents. It was better to have more people watching the show. 2 days later, the Shun residence's family banquet. Ever since Ren Wanyun went crazy, those noble Furins cut off all contact with Ren Wanyun. After all, it was not a glorious thing to have a young lady who got pregnant before marriage. Even though they did not know what happened to Ren Wanyun, but when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter, so no one asked about Ren Wanyun. And the Furins who were on good terms with Ren Wanyun gradually got closer to Chan Roqiu. Even though they could not interact with Ren Wanyun anymore, the relationship with the Shun residents must still be maintained. There was more than one foreign in the Shun residence. Compared to Luo Shuiyan, who was not in the Ding capital all year round and had a vulgar reputation, Chan Roqiu, who came from a scholarly family, was obviously easier to fawn on. Yi Foreign and Zhang Foreign had arrived a long time ago, and Zhang Shaoxian and Yi Peilan pulled Shen Yu to speak. One will only go to Guangwen Tang after the end of the year. It is boring to be locked in the residence these days. They were gossiping, completely forgetting about Shen Qing's death. Forgetting that not long ago, they were true friends with Shen Qing. The friendship between the noble females in the Ding capital was also so thin. Friends could not be compared to benefits, as one was not associating with a person but the power behind that person. Shen Yu also smiled and responded to them. Thus Shen Qing's matter was tacitly forgotten by the few of them. Bai Wei looked at the figure in the distance and said, "Hey, who is that? Is she the Lady Biao you mentioned?" She raised her chin and pointed at a young girl standing not far away. She was dressed in a simple apricot-colored dress and was standing there talking to a servant beside her. "That is third younger sister, Dongling," Shen Yu said with a smile, born from Yinyang. In the past she did not come out due to her poor health, so it is natural that you have not seen her before. She deliberately emphasized the word Yinyang. Hearing this, Zhang Shaoxian and the rest looked at him with disdain. Yi Peilan said, "What body not well, isn't it? Coming out. These Yinyang's children are the most cunning. Yunyang, you must not be deceived by her." Shen Yu smiled. "Third younger sister does not go out of the courtyard. Look, that is my Biao older sister." As Shen Yuan was speaking, he saw Jing Chu Chu walking over from the side. Most likely she did not see Shen Yu and the rest over here, and did not come over to greet them. Bai Wei's eyes were sharp. She asked with confusion, "Mother Yu, didn't you say your cousin came from Suzhou? Just now I saw that her clothes and jewelry seem to be very expensive. Look at the bracelet she's wearing, it's even better than the one you're wearing." Bai Wei's words were unintentional, but Shen Yu's face turned white. She forced a smile and said, "I don't know. It was probably given by grandmother." "What is there to see?" Zhang Shaoxian said. "Could it be that those from Suzhou can be compared to our young ladies in the Ding capital? Clothes and jewelry can all be pretentious, but vision and temperament can't. Look at that delicate and timid look. How can she be presentable?" Shen Yu shook her head. "You all must not say that about Biao, older sister. You're just too kind." Yi Peilan was exasperated that he did not live up to her expectations, getting close to just anyone. Even the idiot in your Fu used to protect him. Now that he has grown up, he still doesn't put you in his eyes. Speaking of which, why did I not see that idiot? The idiot that she was talking about naturally referred to Shen Miao. Ever since Guang Wentang and Shen Miao had a dispute, Yi Peilan had regarded Shen Miao as her #1 enemy, and could not wait to step on her. And the Shen Miao that she was talking about was currently in the western courtyard watching Shan Qiu drink tea. What exactly is going on with grandmother? Shan Qiu furrowed his brows and said, "Why did you invite so many ladies to the banquet? Everywhere you go, it's so noisy." Chapter 315. Most likely all the people that Third Shen knows were invited. Shen Miao handed Shan Qiu a cup of tea. "Perhaps they admire your young general's elegance." "Younger sister, spare me." Shen Qiu waved his hands. "One is already difficult to deal with. With so many females, the battlefield would not be that scary." Shen Miao found it somewhat funny. Shan Qiu's appearance of looking at females like scourges and fierce beasts was somewhat comical, but thinking about it, Shan Qiu was surrounded by females with ulterior motives, and the females in the Shun residence were not easy to deal with. To his straightforward character, it was like a devil's den. There are also those that are not so difficult to deal with. Shen Miao tried to appease him. "In the future, when you meet a young lady that you admire, you would not think like this." Shen Qiu did not speak and stared at her as if he had seen a ghost. After a moment he shook his head. "Younger sister, the expression that you had when you said those words really resembled mother." Shen Miao. With this thought, she really treated Shen Qiu as Fu Ming. Just as she wanted to speak, she suddenly heard some noises outside. She looked at Shan Qiu and both of them went out together, but saw someone shouting at the courtyard entrance, "What is the matter with you all? I am just here to see Shen Miao. Let me in." Shen Miao was startled. "Feng and Ning?" When that person heard Shen Miao's voice, she was also stunned as she waved at her. "It is me, Shen Miao. Quickly let me go." "Let her go," Shen Miao said. "She is the young lady of the Feng family." After Feng and Ning was let go of by the two of them, she then patted the dust off her body and said angrily, "What is the matter with you? Why are there so many guards outside your own courtyard? I thought that something happened to you, so I came in." "Shen Miao, are you sick with so many people blocking outside?" It was probably the first time that Feng and Ning was stopped by someone, and her eldest sister temper flared up. She did not care about Shen Miao's head and face as she reprimanded Shen Miao, but it just so happened to step on Shen Qiu's sore spot. Shen Qiu leaned forward and frowned. "Who are you? Do you know any manners to shout in other people's residence?" Shen Miao. For Shen Qiu to say the words "do you know any manners," it was really thought-provoking. Suddenly being reprimanded, Feng and Ning raised her head and wanted to refute, but when she saw Shen Qiu, she could not help but be slightly surprised. Shen Qiuxing had sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes, and was very handsome. He was different from the soft and weak gentleman in the Ding capital. Usually his smile was warm and innocent, but when his face was cold, he was like a young general on the battlefield that made others tremble with fear, and had a bit of iron-blooded spirit. Feng and Ning's arrogance immediately converged and whispered, "Who are you?" "This is my eldest brother," Shen Miao said. Shen Qiu had some reputation in the Ding capital, with Xie in the south and Xian in the north. The little marquis of the Xie family and the young general of the Shun family were often compared, but it was a pity that Xie Jingxing was not willing to enter officialdom. Otherwise these two people would be the most outstanding generation of military officers. What are you here for? Seeing that Feng and Ning was somewhat embarrassed, Shen Miao asked. When Feng and Ning heard this, she complained, I am here to talk to you. You also know that after those people in Guangwentang knew that I have a good relationship with you, they also excluded me. Who cares? I came looking for you. When Shen Qiu heard this, his face eased up a little. He knew that Shen Miao was neglected in the academy, but unfortunately he was not around all year round and could not always protect Shen Miao. Now that Shen Miao had a friend, even though she was arrogant and did not know etiquette, but make do with it. Of course he and Feng and Ning did not know that good relationship was only what Feng and Ning thought, and Shen Miao really did not have the leisure to make friends with others. Chapter 316. Since your friend has come over, both of you can chat. Shen Qiu lightly coughed. I will go out to look for father to discuss some matters. Shen Miao complied, and after Shen Qiu left, Feng and Ning then whispered, Why is your eldest brother so fierce and fiendish? Just scared me to death. Fierce and fiendish? Shen Miao was too lazy to explain and said, Yes, he had always killed people like flax. Feng and Ning quickly patted her chest and said, Fortunately I admitted my mistake early and lowered my head. Next time I would not dare to rush in like this. Unknowingly, it was time for the Shan residence's family banquet. The male and female guests were seated separately, and the female guests were in the banquet hall of Rongjingtang, while the male guests were taken care of by Shen Gui and Shan Wan. Even though Shen Xian did not have much interest in the family banquet, he did not have the leisure to deal with the bootlicking of the officials in the capital, so he sat down and drank by himself. There were not many males that came, and they were all civil officials that were on good terms with Shen Gui and Shen Wan, and were not on the same side as Shen Xian. Thus when one looked at the bustling table, it seemed that Shen Xian and Shen Qiu were deliberately neglected by others. Shen Qiu was not at all unhappy because of this, and it was lively to eat by himself. On the contrary, Shen Yuan actually had some of Shen Gui's shadow. His smooth and slick appearance made Shen Qiu somewhat nauseated. At the female side of the banquet, the ones who were neglected were naturally Luo Shuiyan and Shan Miao. Since they were Chen Roqiu's sisters, naturally they had to support Chen Roqiu's face. Even though one could not ridicule Shan Miao in front of Luo Shuiyan, it was possible to be neglected. Thus Chen Roqiu and Shen Yu were asked all sorts of questions by the young ladies in Furence, and even Jing Chu and Shen Dongling were given a few words of concern. Only Shen Miao was deliberately ignored by others. Luo Shuiyan was somewhat angry. If it was the previous Shen Miao, she would also be upset. But now it was different. No matter how lively those Furence and young ladies were, Shen Miao would reservedly eat her food and drink her soup. Her every move had a kind of dignified air that made others have an illusion that it was not those people who deliberately neglected her but Shen Miao herself who disdained to talk to these people. It was as if they were punching soft cotton, and after a few more punches everyone started to lose interest. Madame Yi said with a laugh, Everybody says that Suzhou is a place of spiritual beauty. I did not believe it at first, but now that I have seen this Laofurence Biao Xiaojia, I feel that these words are not false. Our capital can't raise such a beautiful girl. Old Shenforen had shown 120% of importance to Jing Chu at the banquet. Even though one did not know the reason, the Furens present were not fools. Since old Shenforen wanted to promote Jing Chu, there was no harm in saying it nicely. Jing Chu was so embarrassed that her face turned red and she lowered her head without saying a word. Old Shenforen smiled. Foren's words, this old one will not comply. Young lady is also very lively and I like it when I look at her. Peilon smiled as she thanked old Shenforen for her praise and became even more curious towards Jing Chu as she softly asked Shen Yu. Old Foreign seems to really like your Biao older sister. Shen Yu vaguely agreed, but there were some doubts in her heart. As Shen Dongling was sitting at the corner of the banquet, Wan Yinyang did not have the opportunity to attend such an occasion. And she did not have her biological mother's help and did not have old Shen Foren's promotion, thus she was unknown. Even so, Shen Dongling did not reveal a trace of unwillingness and only slowly ate the food in her bowl, exactly like a well-behaved and unfavored Shu daughter. Old Shen Foren instructed Jing Chu to eat more and at the same time said good things about Jing Chu to others, making a sensible and intelligent daughter of a humble family appear in the heavens and earth. Chapter 317. It was until the servant who came over to pour the tea accidentally splashed the tea on Jing Chu that this kind of lift then stopped. Old Shen Foreign scolded that careless servant. How do you do things? What if Biao young lady is scalded? No harm. Jing Chu smiled. The tea is not hot, so I am fine. The clothes are wet. Old Shen Foreign looked at the large water stains on Jing Chu's clothes and said with concern, one cannot wear wet clothes on such a cold day. Sheer, bring Biao young lady down to change into a clean set of clothes. She then instructed Jing Chu. One must not catch a cold. Jing Chu lowered her head to look at her clothes. No matter how thin the winter clothes were, it would still have weight. If the tea was washed into the cotton, it would be uncomfortable to wear it. At that moment she did not decline and said good to old Shen Foreign with a red face and bid farewell to the female guests before leaving with the servant who led the way. Jiang Foreign said, Jing family's young lady is really blessed to be valued so highly by old Foreign. How is it that she is blessed? Old Shen Foreign smiled till the wrinkles on her face wrinkled together. It is this old one's blessing. This girl is well behaved and sensible. This old one likes her. Hearing this, everyone flattered again. Chan Roqiu glanced at old Shen Foreign and her eyes subconsciously drifted towards Shan Miao. Most likely she was aware of her gaze as Shan Miao also looked towards Chan Roqiu with a slightly puzzled gaze. Chan Roqiu smiled and lowered her head as a trace of comfort flashed in her heart. But she did not see that the moment she lowered her head, the puzzled look in Shan Miao's eyes had disappeared and what replaced it was an extremely faint smile. If one were to look carefully, that smile seemed to contain some inexplicable excitement. It was Shen Dongling who was at the table who glanced at Shan Miao without a trace before quickly lowering her head to eat the food in her bowl. At the male side of the banquet, it was not as meticulous as the female side of the banquet. After all, it was the style of the officialdom, and everyone was intoxicated with wine. Even though Shen Xian and Shan Qiu were left out in the cold, there were a few colleagues who came over to toast. After a few cups, Shen Qiu's head was somewhat dizzy. Brat, only a few cups and you are already drunk. Did you not eat? Shen Xian said angrily. Shen Qiu rubbed the space between his eyebrows and shook his head. I don't know. As a man who grew up in a military camp, this bit of wine was nothing to him. One had to know that they usually drank wine from jars in the military camp and had always looked down on the wine in the Ding capital, as they felt that it was not strong enough. Who knew that they would be slapped in the face today? It is really a waste of teaching you for so many years. Shen Xian hated iron for not becoming steel. Uncle, don't be angry. It was Jing Guanshen who explained with a smile. It is not that older Biao brother does not have a tolerance for alcohol, but he mixed Futu wine and Yingguang wine to drink together. He pointed to the wine cup in front of Shan Qiu. As expected, the wine in the cup was not red like the Futu wine, nor was it clear like the silver light wine. Instead, it seemed to be mixed together. Jing Guanshang continued to explain. There are people drinking silver light wine and there are people drinking Futu wine. Biao older brother probably did not notice and poured them together. Drinking the silver light wine and the Futu wine together. Other people would pass out after drinking half a cup. It is not easy for cousin brother to still be sober. Ha ha. One of the Darren laughed when he heard it. This nephew's tolerance for alcohol is already not bad. General Shen must not blame him. Shen Yuan swept a glance at Shan Qiu and said, eldest brother cannot continue to drink like this. It is better to support him to the room to rest. Shen Qiu waved his hands and one did not know what he was mumbling. It seemed that he was already very drunk. Why not I send older Biao brother back? Jing Guanshang said with a smile. One would not hit a smiling face. Even though Shen Xian was rather critical of Jing Guanshang because of Shen Miao's matter, but ever since guards were placed at the courtyard doors, Jing Guanshang was well behaved. Shen Xian looked at him. Since that is the case, then trouble you and Achi to support him back. Chapter 318. Just as Jing Guanshang was about to get up, he saw Shan Qiu grabbing onto Shen Yuan and shaking his head. Achi, bring me there. Shen Yuan was startled. Shen Xian frowned. This brat had treated you as Achi? He then said to Shen Qiu, brat, quickly release your second younger brother. Shen Qiu did not move. Shen Yuan's eyes moved slightly and said, Biao younger brother and I are the same. Since that is the case, let me send eldest brother back to the room. He helped Shun show up and not waiting for Shen Xian to refuse, he walked out. Just as Shen Xian was about to speak, Shen Wan had already brought the wine over. Eldest brother, let me toast you a cup. No one took the twists and turns of the banquet to heart, and it was an extremely common thing for people to enter and leave. It was only until the end of the banquet that when the Furens were chatting in the courtyard, Bai Foren seemed to remember, why is Jing family's young lady not back yet? After Jing Chu-Chu's clothes were dirted by the spilled tea from the maid, she went back to change her clothes. But she did not appear after that. Old Shen Foren was surprised for a moment and said to Sheer, go and find someone to ask why Biao young lady is not back yet. Perhaps she is somewhat drunk. Shen Yu smiled. Just now she drank a lot of honey wine. Even though it is sweet, the after effects are strong. Biao older sister loves sweet things and forgot to stop her just now. Perhaps she is feeling dizzy and is resting in the room. Sheer complied and went out. Feng and Ning's lips twitched and quietly pushed Shun Miao. One thought that with so many daughters in your residence, the family banquet would be very lively. To think that I still had to follow my mother, but now it seems that it is just as boring. Feng and Ning was the pearl of the Guanglu residence and did not have so many sisters, but even though Shan Miao had so many sisters, she was not close and was even deliberately left out. In Feng and Ning's eyes it was meaningless. It has always been so. Shin Miao answered. Feng and Ning looked to the left and right. I want to go to the clean room and will come back later. Wait for me. After Feng and Ning left with the maid, Sheer also returned to old Shin Foren's side and shook her head. Old Foren, Biao young lady is not in the room. Not in the room. Old Shin Foren raised her voice and all the Furen's eyes looked towards her direction. Old Shin Foren quickly lowered her voice. Where is that place? Sheer shook her head. The servants don't know either. This girl. Old Shin Foren was somewhat anxious. Could something have happened? When the noble madam saw her like this, they naturally began to ponder in their hearts. Old madam? Coincidentally Chan Rocho walked over from the other side and asked what happened before smiling. Old Foren need not worry. I just came back from master's place and think that it is because Chu-Chu is drunk. Coincidentally, Chor was also drunk and had been sent back to his room to rest. The wine in our family banquet is strong. Chu-Chu might have gone to another room. She intentionally or unintentionally pointed out the fact that Shan Qiu was also drunk, and Shun Miao's gaze suddenly sharpened. Old Shin Foren shook her head and said, go and find a few people to look for Chu-Chu. After all, she is in this residence. It would not be good if she caught a cold. She said as she looked at everyone. Speaking of which, this old one recently obtained a golden Buddha painting that was embroidered by Zhang Qiaoxian. It is hung in this old one's main hall, and if everyone wants to take a look, this old one is willing to bring everyone over to take a look. Zhang Qiaoxian was an embroidery master in Mingqi, and one embroidery was priceless. Hearing that old Shin Foren had one here, everyone wanted to broaden their horizons. Shin Miao's lips snorted. That double-sided embroidery was a reward from the palace, and was given to old Shin Foren by Shin Xian a few years ago. It was just that she was stingy and did not take it out for everyone to see. Now that she was willing to bleed, it must be because of other matters. It was just that. Could it really be as old Shin Foren wished? The Furens and young ladies were indeed very enthusiastic as they followed old Shin Foren to look at that embroidery painting. The main hall of Rongjingtang was a room similar to a tea room for guests to rest. On normal days, very few people would go there as old Shin Foren did not have many guests and most of the time the tea room was empty. However, when they walked to the door, they saw something strange at the door. There were some noises coming from the closed door. One could not make out what the sound was, but it seemed that something had been knocked over. Everyone suddenly stopped walking. Who is inside? Where did the people guarding outside go? Old Shin Foren asked. Replying to Old Foren, they were still here just now. There should not be anyone in the tea room. Sheer said doubtfully. Really raising a bunch of idlers. Can't even guard the door properly. Old Shin Foren was somewhat angry. Open the door. Chapter 319. Open the door. When old Shin Foren said those words, there was already some anger on her face. The madams had always been the type to watch a good show, so none of them left. Chun Rocho comforted Mother, "Do not be angry. Perhaps the guest entered the wrong room." Finishing, she gave a look to the maids, and the two maids beside her took a step forward and pushed the door open. That door looked tightly shut, but it was not tightly shut and seemed to be pushed open with a light push. However, following that, one heard an Aya scream, and the two maids jumped in shock and took 2 steps back. Their actions caused others to be suspicious. Old Shinforan snapped, "What is going on?" One of the maids did not seem to be able to stand properly and both hands held onto the door, but inadvertently opened the door wider, and the situation inside was exposed to everyone. Everyone could not help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. The tea room was very small and was originally a place for a temporary rest. There was only a small couch that one could lean on and a small table. And the teacups on the table were all smashed onto the floor, and on the narrow couch, 2 figures overlapped, and one could vaguely see that there was a male pressing on top of a female. The sound that was heard just now was the sound of the teacups on the table shattering during the dispute. Now this chaotic scene was exposed in front of everyone without any concealment. Those Furins immediately covered their young lady's eyes, fearing that they would see such a dirty thing. And Shir, who was outside, also exclaimed, "Biao biao, young lady. Choo-choo." Chun Rocho also shouted, "What?" Old Shinforan was startled and almost fainted. Fuer, who was by her side, quickly went to support Old Shinforan. "What is going on?" Chun Rocho's face was somewhat flustered, and in the eyes of others, it was like there was a scandal in the residence and she was at a loss of what to do. And the 2 people in the room did not know what was going on. Hearing such a big commotion outside, the male lying on top of the female did not move, but the female tried hard to push the male up. Heavens! Shir covered her mouth and had a look of surprise on her face. Did eldest young master not return to his room after getting drunk? Why would he be here? When these words reached the ears of the crowd, they immediately understood the ins and outs of the matter. The eldest young master of the residence, who was drunk, happened to meet Biao Xiaojia, who was going back to change her clothes. His lust was suddenly aroused and he could not control himself. Thus, he did the dirty deed. Chioer has always been steady, so how would he do such a thing? Chun Rocho shook her head. "It is all because of drinking." Speaking till here, she put on a distressed look. From his words, he had already confirmed Shun Chio's crimes. Shin Miao looked on silently. It was almost the same scene as in her previous life. After Shun Chio woke up, he would not be able to defend himself even with 100 mouths. Even though Shenxian and Luo Shuiyan believed in Shun Chio, but the facts were placed in front of them, and the one who suffered a loss was indeed the young ladies. If Shun Chio did not marry Jing Chu Chu, with so many Furins that came today, they would drown Shun Chio with their saliva. And what did she do at that time? Shin Miao's face darkened as she thought about it. She felt deeply humiliated that she had an older brother who knew how to defile others' innocence. She and the others spurned Shun Chio. Shin Yu suddenly said, "Fifth younger sister, why are you not speaking?" Everyone's eyes suddenly looked towards Shun Miao. Shun Chio was Shun Miao's eldest brother, and for Shun Chio to do such a thing, Shun Miao's face would not be glorious. One did not know if this Shun Miao would wholeheartedly help Shin Chio, or would she commit a righteous act. Yi Pei Lan liked to see Shun Miao be unlucky, and at this moment she was gloating and said hypocritically, "Shun Miao, actually this matter has nothing to do with you. After all, your eldest brother is your eldest brother and you are you. Even though you are one family, one cannot lump it together." Chapter 320. But the more she said it, the more it reminded everyone that Shun Miao was Shun Chio's younger sister. If Shin Chio's conduct was bad, how good could Shin Miao be? "I just find it strange," Shun Miao lightly said. "Instead of solving the matter, one is discussing here. Why not get someone to call the outsiders at the Shun residence's doors to watch the commotion? After all, there are many people." Her sarcasm was like a knife that hit the bull's eye. Yes, such a thing had happened. If it was an ordinary family, they would immediately think of ways to cover it up, but this old Shinforan and Chan Rochio seemed to be eager for more people to know, and even started discussing at the doors. What kind of intentions were these? At least it was not good intentions. What was the reason for this? Chan Roqiu and old Shen Foreign were somewhat embarrassed but heard Shen Miao continue to speak lightly. Even if my mother is not here, there should be someone to preside over the overall situation. Could it be that second Shen is replaced with third Shen and third Shen do not know what to do? Chan Roqiu's face suddenly turned green and even Shen Yu's expression was not good. At this time when Ren Wanyun was mentioned, everyone's eyes were somewhat meaningful. Chan Roqiu was even more angry. Shen Miao's words were clearly saying that her ability to preside over the overall situation was not as good as Ren Wanyun, which was not slapping her face. Shen Miao was after all a person who had stayed in the inner palace for many years, and which female in the inner palace were easy to deal with? Even if they were to engage in a verbal battle, it would be like swords flashing and one sentence could have 10 meanings. Now her words did not seem light nor heavy but it made one think deeply. Just because Luo Shuiyan was not here, one could casually bully Shen Qiu? And seeing Shen Qiu's scandal, one did not care and even let everyone know about it? More importantly, the various Furins were not fools. Previously they were shocked by the situation in front of them and neglected other things, but Shen Miao's calm attitude made them gradually calm down and when they looked inside again, it was somewhat unclear. It was said that a scandal had happened, but who knew if this scandal was man-made or not? Old Shen Foreign was angered by Shen Miao's words and said, "Fifth girl, such a thing happened to eldest brother and you have this kind of attitude. You are really stubborn." Shen Miao almost laughed but she shook her head. This matter is considered a big matter. It is better to invite father, second and third Shu over before making a decision. Old Shen Foreign was stunned. Chan Roqiu was stunned and even all the Furins present were stunned. For this matter it was better if fewer people knew about it, but now Shen Miao was eager for more people to know about it. Chan Roqiu's heart was somewhat uneasy. She did not know why but even though everything was going according to her imagination, she felt that something was not right. The door was wide open, and there seemed to be no movement from the person inside. Old Shen Foreign's maids wanted to close the door but heard Shen Miao sneering, "Do not close it. Since what should be seen has been seen, then closing the door would only be burying one's head in the sand. Who still want to see one can take a closer look." Even at this time old Shen Foreign also felt that something was not right. She wanted to let people enter the room but Shen Miao's overbearing attitude made one surprised. At this moment it was hard to get off the back of a tiger, and if she were to do anything more, it would only make things worse. Old Shen Foreign could only suppress the uneasiness in her heart, and helplessly looked at Shen Miao instructing people to invite Shen Xian and the rest over. Jiang Shaoxian wiped her tears and said, "Miss Jing is still young. What will she do for the rest of her life if something like this happens? Trouble everyone to be a witness for me." Old Shen Foreign spoke, "My Shen family has always been upright and since such a matter that corrupts the family's reputation, naturally one must give everyone an explanation. Chu Chu is my paternal family's grandniece and is well-behaved and sensible. I originally thought to keep her by my side and in the future find a good family for her. Who knew that?" Old Shen Foreign's face was in pain. "My Shen family is not a family that bullies others. No matter what happens in the future, Chu Chu will be my Jing family's granddaughter-in-law. There is no doubt about this and one will definitely give Chu Chu an explanation." Chapter 321. What a high-sounding reason. What a righteous face. If one did not know the inside story, Shen Miao would also praise old Shen Foreign's attitude. Her eyes were filled with ridicule. Worthy of being a singer and actress, she was really lifelike when she acted. Sure enough, when old Shen Foreign finished her words, she immediately won everyone's good impression. Worthy of being an aristocratic family. Really dare to take responsibility for one's actions. If it is like this, then Jing family's young lady would have someone to rely on for the rest of her life. It is indeed true that the Shen family's family conduct is upright. Old Shen Foreign's choice is really wise. One did not think that old Shen Foreign would have this kind of bearing. Half of it was praising old Shen Foreign for being able to remedy her mistakes and the other half was pitying Jing Chu Chu for inexplicably suffering such a calamity. As for Shan Qiu, he was almost unanimously portrayed by everyone as a shameless pervert. Just at this moment, one heard a hurried exclamation from outside, "Chu Chu! Chu Chu!" Looking up, the people that Shin Miao instructed finally called Shin Xian and entourage over. But this was still alright as those colleagues in the official circles were not called over. There were only Shin Xian, 3 brothers and Luo Shuiyan, and the one walking at the front was Jing Guansheng. He took large strides forward, and when the Furins saw him, they all made way for him. Jing Guansheng stood in front of the door and did not enter, but just stared blankly at the door as if he was struck by lightning. What is going on? Luo Shuiyan said anxiously. Chen Roqiu wiped her tears and said, Eldest Saw need not be anxious. This matter cannot be blamed on Qiu'er. It is all because of drinking. On the way over, Shen Gui and Shen Wan had already heard of the matter. Shen Gui could not wait for Shen Xian to be unlucky and immediately put on an ashamed posture. It is all my fault. I should have stopped Qiu'er when he was drinking. If he was not drunk, how would such a thing happen? Second older brother need not blame yourself. Shen Wan sighed. No one would want such a thing to happen. It is better to think about what is happening now. What else can it be? Jing Guansheng's eyes were red. My younger sister came here perfectly fine but was conspired by others and her innocence was tainted. Naturally there must be an explanation. Keep your mouth clean, Baghdad. Shin Xian got angry when he heard it. Shun Qiu, that brat. This old man would not do such a thing. Not bad. Luo Shuiyan sneered. Jing Chuchu is not some outstanding beauty, and when Qiu'er was at the border, there were so many Darren who wanted to marry young ladies to him, and any one of them would be better looking than Jing Chuchu. Isn't Qiu'er stupid to ruin his future just for Jing Chuchu? Shin Xian was a ruthless character that killed enemies on the battlefield, and was unmoved by force or persuasion. Luo Shuiyan was even more shrewish and did not know how to be tactful with her words. Her words made Jing Guansheng's face turn pale, and as for old Shin Foran, she was so angry that she could not speak. But thinking about it, what they said made sense. Even though Jing Chuchu's looks were not bad, it was not something that was rare in the world. Jing Guansheng's words of plotting was somewhat excessive. Shin Miao somewhat wanted to laugh. In the previous lifetime, Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan also protected Shin Qiu like this. Unfortunately, everyone knew that Jing Chuchu did not have any schemes, and at that time under the watchful eyes of everyone, what else could one say, and could only admit defeat. Old Shin Foran called so many noble Furins from the capital over to testify, so that Shun Qiu would have no way out. Witness and material evidence are here, so how can you quibble? Jing Guansheng said angrily. Could it be that my younger sister, a weak female, can force Shun Qiu? I had thought that Shun Qiu was a gentleman, but did not think that one would know a person's face but not his heart. I want to report to the authorities. Report to the authorities? That was a family matter that everyone would know about. Old Shin Foran said angrily. Enough. She said to Jing Guansheng in a soft voice, Guansheng, you are my grandnephew and you know how I treated you these days. I like this girl Chu Chu so much that I would not agree to let her suffer grievances even if others agree. Do not worry, one will definitely give you an explanation. Chapter 322. Eldest Families. Old Shin Foran changed the topic and angrily said to Shin Xian, this matter is Qiu'er's fault first. How did your father teach you in the past? The Shin family's way of doing things is indomitable, and one must be responsible for the young lady's innocence. For Qiu'er to do such a thing, one must marry Chu Chu and treat her well for a lifetime. The Shin family's way of doing things was something that old General Shun had exhorted to Shin Xian in the past. If it was in the past, Shin Xian would give old Shin Foran face and would eat this grievance in silence. But this year in the Ding capital, the discord between him and old Shin Foran was getting deeper and deeper. At this moment, when he heard these words and looked at old Shin Foran's face, he felt an unspeakable hypocrisy and hatred. There was a nameless anger in his heart as Shin Xian said angrily, I have said before that Qiu'er would not do such a thing. But it was Shin Dongling, who had been hiding at the back that no one noticed, who suddenly spoke. Why did no one go in to take a look and say that the person inside is eldest brother? Is eldest brother really inside? When the words were said, everyone was stunned for a moment. Not bad. Was the person inside really Shin Qiu? From the beginning till now, no one went in to take a look, and even if one could see, it was only 2 overlapping bodies. In fact, all the Furins' hearts roughly understood that this matter was very deep. It was said that it was a misunderstanding after getting drunk, but most likely it was a scheme by others. But since it was calculated to this point, Shen Qiu could only admit that he was unlucky. Chen Roqiu smiled. Dongling, what are you talking about? Only Qiu'er left the banquet after getting drunk. Otherwise who else could it be? There is also second older brother. Shen Miao said lightly. Why is second older brother also missing? Why is it that only my eldest brother is responsible? Younger sister, what responsibility are you talking about? An abrupt voice suddenly sounded and Chen Roqiu's brain exploded. Everyone turned back to look. Not far away, Shan Qiu was dressed in fresh clothes and beside him stood Feng and Ning, who was looking at everyone with some puzzlement. And Ning! Feng Foreign jumped in shock and quickly went over to pull her away and reprimanded. Why are you running around? I went to the washroom and got lost. Feng and Ning said innocently, after going around for a long time, I could not get out and coincidentally met eldest brother Shen, so he brought me over. What happened? Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan were only startled for a moment before Shin Xian laughed out loud. That laughter, in the ears of everyone present, was filled with pride. Shen Qiu was perfectly fine here, so who was the person inside? I've seen enough. Shen Miao smiled. Someone let us see clearly who the person responsible is. It was already too late for old Shen Foreign to stop her. The maids by Luo Shuiyan's side were all strong and without waiting for Chen Roqiu to speak, they rushed in first. Their movements were too fast, and before anyone could react, they heard a groan from inside. Two maidservants had already brought the man to the front of everyone. Replying to Madam, it's the second young master. Shen Yuan's clothes were disheveled and his flushed face appeared in front of everyone. Compared to Shen Qiu, who just shouted out the name but did not go in to check, this kind of evidence was almost irrefutable. Everyone's eyes uniformly looked towards Shen Gui and old Shen Foreign. Shen Miao's voice of ridicule sounded, what? So it was just a misunderstanding. Everything was fine and almost made eldest brother the scapegoat. Next time all of you servants better open your eyes wider. If this matter of spoiling one's reputation were to be spread out, one would be imprisoned. Younger sister, what are you talking about? Shen Qiu scratched his head. What scapegoat do I have to carry? Qiu'er, someone wants to shove a daughter-in-law to you. Luo Shuiyan could see that just now old Shen Foreign and Chen Roqiu were pressuring her, and now it was just a false alarm. The nameless fire rose up and her words became more impolite. I said that our Qiu'er's daughter-in-law must be seen by me personally and Qiu'er scrupulously abides by his duties, so how would he casually bring a daughter-in-law into his own room? Chapter 323. It was Feng and Ning who was suddenly enlightened and said, what? I have always been together with eldest brother Shen, and it seems that eldest brother Shen had just sobered up. But one had only heard of forceful marriage. Could it be that there is a forceful marriage now? Feng and Ning was also a talent and she deliberately exaggerated it, causing Feng Foreign's face to change as she reprimanded. And Ning. Feng and Ning stuck out her tongue and no longer spoke. Grandmother, Biao older brother, second Shu, with the current situation, what can be done? Shen Miao said in a difficult manner, but her expression was leisurely, and anyone could see that she had the mentality of watching a show. What was called slapping one's face? This was called slapping one's face. Old Shen Foreign was somewhat flustered. Since today's matter was done under her orders, naturally she had made thorough preparations. But why did Shen Qiu become Shen Yuan? She did not know what happened. But when she saw Shen Miao's beaming smile, old Shen Foreign understood in her heart that Shen Miao was definitely involved in this matter. Shen Gui was also silly. He heard that Shen Qiu had committed a mistake, so he specially came over to watch the show. One had to know that a person's reputation would affect one's career in the court, else those imperial censors would not be able to receive such a high salary. Now Shen Qiu had become Shen Yuan and Shen Yuan had just returned to the capital to take up his post when such a thing happened. Was this not cutting off his official career path? The young ladies were still somewhat confused, but the Furens could see it clearly. Today's matter was obviously a play that the Shen family put on by themselves. It was obvious that someone wanted to use Jing Chu Chu to trick Shen Qiu once, but who knew that at the end Shen Qiu became Shen Yuan? Thinking about Shen Miao's attitude from the beginning till now, how did it turn into such a situation? Naturally Shen Miao was involved. Everyone said that the D5th young lady of the Shen family was an idiot and was treated as a love-struck fool. But looking at it now, no one would dare to treat her as a love-struck fool in the future. One fear that the person who set up the scheme today did not expect to be counterattacked. Even those who were invited as witnesses had now become Shen Miao's bargaining chips. Old Shen Foreign was riding a tiger and it was hard to get off. She rolled her eyes and was about to pretend to faint to get rid of the matter when she heard Shan Miao said, "Biao older brother. You as her older brother must be very sad that Biao older sister met with such a matter. Do not worry, grandmother had just said that one would definitely be responsible for Biao older sister." Old Shen Foreign did not feel dizzy in a split second and stared at Shan Miao. Yuan'er is still unconscious at this moment and it is obvious that he was schemed by others. "Fifth girl, you must not speak nonsense." "Old madam, what are you saying?" Not waiting for Shan Miao to speak, Luo Shuiyan first exploded. "Just now when you said that the person inside was Cho'er, you had never heard that you were thinking for him. Yuan'er is your grandson. Isn't Cho'er also your grandson? This bowl of water of yours is quite peaceful, right?" Luo Shuiyan was not afraid to shed all pretense of cordiality with old Shen Foreign as she had such a fiery temperament. With a flurry of words, old Shen Foreign could only say angrily, "You are rebelling. Grandmother, let us first talk about how to deal with second older brother's matter." Shen Miao gently smiled. Her tone was warm and there was not a bit of temper from the beginning to the end, which made old Shen Foreign even more embarrassed. She said, "Just now what did grandmother say?" Grandmother said, "Grandfather said before that the Shen family must be indomitable and one must be responsible for the other person's innocence. Second older brother must marry Biao older sister." She deliberately imitated old Shen Foreign's righteous tone, and Luo Shuiyan burst out laughing. Shen Miao looked at everyone. All Furens have seen it. Grandmother has always kept her words and in such a short period of time, one would definitely not forget it. The surrounding noble Furens all knew that Shan Miao was using them as guns but they could only laugh dryly. Old Shen Foreign's face turned red and white after being ridiculed by Shan Miao. She could only repeat it over and over. "This matter is fishy. This matter is fishy." Chapter 324. I also feel that this matter is fishy. Shen Miao raised her eyebrows. "So it is better to report to the authorities. Father, your subordinates acted quickly. It's not too late to go to the capital governor now." Before he could finish, Shen Gui shouted, "No." Shen Miao was surprised. "Why is it not working again?" Shen Gui looked at her fiercely. Once this matter was reported to the authorities, there was no way he could hide it. The imperial censors in the court were very idle every day. If they knew about this matter, it would be strange if they didn't report him. Moreover, it was a scandal after all. What good would it do if everyone knew about it? Forget it. Shen Miao waved her hands with a headache. After all, this matter still depends on Biao older brother's opinion. She looked at the gloomy Jing Guanshan and smiled gently. Biao older brother is the one who is most distressed. Jing Guanshan did not speak. Old Shen Foreign said angrily, "First find a physician to take a look." Jing Chu and Shen Yuan did not make any movements and one feared that they had fallen into a scheme. Thus old Shen Foreign was unable to vent her anger. One had to know that everything that happened today should be Shan Qiulai's misfortune. But who knew that it had become Shen Yuan's misfortune but she could not say it. Chan Roqiu was busy dealing with the various Furens. Those Furens and young ladies had seen enough of a good show and knew that today it was just a fight between Shan Miao and the rest of the Shen family. But in the end Shen Miao won. They promised not to tell, and took their leave. Feng and Ning winked at Shan Miao before leaving with Feng Foreign. Shen Yu looked at the messy courtyard and her heart was rather disappointed. Just a little bit more and he would have been able to destroy Shen Qiu, so why did it become Shen Yuan in the end? Shen Xian and the rest also followed old Shen Foreign to the main hall. There must be a way to handle this matter. In addition, it was related to the reputation of the Shen family. Not many people had seen it, so it was not something that could be solved with a small fight. Shen Miao was walking at the back when she was suddenly stopped by someone. Looking back, it was Jing Guanshan walking in front of him. Shen Miao's stature was small and Jing Guan was slightly plump and tall. Thus standing in front of Shen Miao was quite oppressive. The usual smile on his usually gentle and amiable face had already disappeared, leaving only a vicious and gloomy expression, as if a wolf in sheep's skin had revealed its true colors. He said, "Fifth sister, did you do this?" "Yes," Shen Miao readily admitted. Not expecting that Shen Miao would say that, Jing Guansheng was surprised for a moment before he angrily raised his fist at Shen Miao, and was about to swing it down. Jing Zhe and Guyu quickly blocked as Shen Miao looked at him coldly. "It was done by me. What can you do to me? You are shameless." Jing Guansheng roared. "The shameless one is me?" Shen Miao looked at him. "Biao, older brother, do you dare to say that you are not aware of today's matter?" Jing Guansheng was stunned and stared angrily at him. As Jing Chuchu's elder brother, how could Jing Guansheng not know old Shen Foreign's plans? It was beneficial for him to let Jing Chuchu become Shan Qiu's foreign, but who knew that at the end it became Shen Yuan? "You let your own sister become a bargaining chip, and now you say that I'm shameless. Cousin, don't you think you're too disgusting?" Shen Miao smiled. It's a foregone conclusion. Cousin, why don't you think about it in another way?" Shen Miao looked at him calmly. "Biao, older sister, has already lost her innocence in front of so many people. In the future it would be very difficult to marry into a good family and become Biao, older brother's bargaining chip. Who would be willing to marry a used shoe?" She said it so viciously that Jing Guansheng clenched his fists but had to admit that what Shen Miao said was right. What was called losing one's wife and losing one's soldiers he now understood. Jing Chuchu had become like this. In the future, which good family would be willing to want her? Not to mention rich families. "Biao, older brother, seeing that you and I are cousins, I will remind you." Shen Miao smiled cordially. Actually, as long as one marries into the Shen family, it would be considered as climbing up a high branch. Since that is the case, what is the difference between marrying eldest brother and second brother? Jing Guansheng's heart moved and looked at Shen Miao without saying a word. "Speaking of which, my second older brother also entered officialdom at a young age, and his future prospects are bright. Compared to my eldest brother, he is also outstanding. Since it is the idea of using one's younger sister to change one's future, and the person on the bed is second older brother, then it is not good to change from eldest saw to second saw. Anyway, there is no harm to you." She looked at her nails and one did not know who she was talking to. One must know how to be flexible. Chapter 325. The scandalous matter in the Shen residence's family banquet did not spread out, but the so-called spread was only between the commoners. As for the aristocratic families, they had always been inextricably linked. This foreign treated it as a joke to that foreign, but in private it had already been spread around. And old Shen foreign's self-righteous words also forced herself to a dead end. If she did not do as she said, it would be a clear slap on her face. If she did as she said, she would lose her most outstanding grandson, so how would she be willing to do so? But because of this matter, the first household in old Shen foreign's relationship was completely stiff. Originally it was only the second and third household that were estranged, but old Shen foreign's subtle attitude at the family banquet made Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xian feel like a fishbone was stuck in their throats. They were not people who would swallow insults and humiliation, so they simply folded their arms and watched a good show. After Shen Yuan and Jing Chuchu woke up, Jing Chuchu naturally cried again and said that she was dragged in by Shen Yuan. Shen Yuan was furious and said that he did not know what happened when he fainted, and when he woke up, he was already lying together with Jing Chuchu. He could not recall these matters, and it was possible that Jing Chuchu was still a virgin. However, it was not important whether Jing Chuchu was a virgin or not. After seeing such an erotic scene in front of so many noble furins, the rest of Jing Chuchu's life would be over. Perhaps it was because of the stimulation from this matter, or perhaps it was because of other reasons. The Jing siblings changed from their usual gentle and submissive manner and became aggressive, wanting Shen Yuan to give them an explanation. Moreover, old Shen foreign had previously said that if it was Shan Qiu, she would be able to become the eldest young foreign of the Shen residence. Now that it was Shen Yuan, naturally Jing Chuchu would become the second young foreign of the Shen residence. Old Shen foreign's calculations were exquisite. How could she let such a thing happen? Shen Yuan was her most outstanding grandson, but he wanted to marry a young lady from a small family. so she immediately found some excuses to decline. Jing Guansheng looked refined but was incomparably astute in his bones. Without a second word, he wanted to bring Jing Chuchu to see the officials and even sent a letter back to Suzhou. When the people in Suzhou heard this, they were angry at old Shenforen's duplicitous actions and brought people to the Ding capital to demand an explanation, and actually wanted to waste time with the Shen family. The original alliance broke in one day and old Shenforen scolded Jing Guansheng and sister as white-eyed wolves all day long in the residence. Jing Guansheng and sister also ridiculed old Shenforen for being disrespectful, and the atmosphere in the Shen residence was foul. Shen Yuan was also very angry, but this matter was too big, and he could not directly kill Jing Chuchu. So many Furens were watching, and once something happened to Jing Chuchu, everyone would suspect him. Moreover, the Jing family was not easy to deal with, no matter how noisy it was outside. The doors of the western courtyard of the Shen residence were always closed and everyone was still happy and harmonious. Shen Qiu did not get drunk that day, but it was Shen Miao who asked him to pretend to be drunk. As for why Shen Yuan and Jing Chuchu rolled together, Shen Qiu did not know the reason. Even though Shen Miao was unwilling to tell him and threatened him not to tell Shen Xian and wife, Shen Qiu could faintly guess something, and when he returned to the residence, he was not even willing to take a step in. In the room, Shen Miao sat at the table and wrote a prescription for the kitchen. It was now impossible for Jing Chuchu to curry favor with the first household. Thus there was no need for her to go to the sword practice grounds every day to keep an eye on it. But Shen Xian and the rest of the soldiers were eagerly looking forward to Shen Miao's desserts and soup. Shen Miao was too lazy to do it herself, so she wrote some prescriptions for the kitchen. In the end she was praised every day, and those soldiers were more respectful to her than Shan Qiu. Luo Shuiyan also asked, "When did Jiao Jiao know so many prescriptions? Could it be that she is interested in cooking?" Shen Miao vaguely responded. She was after all not the kind of docile woman who was willing to wash her hands and cook soup. It was just that in her previous life, in order to please many people, she had condescended to learn some cooking methods from the imperial chefs. It was just that no matter how well she did in the past, the people who were being fawned upon would not be moved. But now, Shen Miao shook her head. This roughly meant that pleasing a person and pleasing a beast were different. Some people knew how to be grateful and some people would only bite the hand that fed them. Chapter 326. Bai Lu took the paper that Shen Miao had written on and hung it to dry before getting up to send it to the small kitchen. At the moment, the west courtyard didn't eat with the east courtyard anymore. They directly opened a small kitchen. It was obvious that they didn't trust the east courtyard. "I heard that young master cousin quarreled with old madam again today." Jingzhe was helping Shen Miao to tidy up the paper and ink on the table as she said, "It seems that the Jing family is already on the way." Old Foreign saw that it could not be dragged on and was anxious. "I've said everything that needs to be said." Shen Miao picked up the teacup and took a sip. Biao older brother is an intelligent person and cannot be taken advantage of by others. Young master cousin is really ruthless. Gu Yu also said, currently all day long threatening with reporting to the authorities, knowing that second young master is returning to the capital to take up his post. If this was reported to the authorities, second young master's official road would be ruined. This servant thinks that this time second young master must marry Biao Young Mississippi. This is all thanks to old madam's strict adherence to old master's family teachings. When she reached the end of her sentence, she couldn't help raising her voice as she forcefully suppressed the joy in her heart. Old Shenforen's actions made one feel nauseous, and now that she had lifted a rock to smash her own feet, how could one not be happy? But, Jingzhe asked, what is so good about Biao young lady spending so much effort to marry second young master? Old Foreign had shed all pretense of cordiality with her, and second young master was also unhappy. Even if she married into the Fu, they would not be affectionate. Isn't Miss Biao looking for trouble for herself? Shen Miao smiled gently. Jing Chuchu is not marrying a person but money. Since that's the case, what's the difference between liking them and loving them? In the previous lifetime when Jing Chuchu married Shen Qiu treated her well, but at the end she still harmed Shen Qiu to such a stage. To Jing Chuchu, as long as she could climb up, it was not important who the other party was. Speaking of which, Gu Yu's lips twitched. Biao young lady wanted to harm eldest young master and now let her marry in without rhyme or reason. It really makes one unhappy. After all of this happened because of her. Why didn't the wicked get their retribution? Shen Miao opened the window and looked out. Do you think that this is the end? Gu Yu's eyes lit up. Young lady still has a trick up her sleeve? The longer she stayed with Shen Miao, the more she saw of Shen Miao's methods, and Gu Yu was already used to it. If it was in the past, she would most likely be amazed at Shen Miao's coldness and viciousness, but after experiencing a series of matters, she did not have any good impression of the other two households in the Shan residence. Those so-called sympathy and pity had long disappeared. Letting them suffer in silence is just the beginning. Shen Miao said. Jing Chu schemed against eldest brother first. Does she think that she can escape? Jing Zhe's and Gu Yu's eyes sparkled as they looked at Shen Miao. Shen Miao waved her hands. First go and settle the money for Fuer. Old Shenforen was recently busy dealing with the siblings Jing Chu and Jing Guanshang. Thus she did not bother to investigate the truth as to why the person was changed at the end of the family banquet. Sooner or later Fuer would be married off to the steward's one-eyed son. With more money, he would think of ways to help her escape from the Shun residence. Gu Yu received the money and smiled. This servant understands. Biao young lady's personal maid should also send a portion of money over, right? Shen Miao nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. The most painful thing to bite was the dog raised by one's side. Just like Xiao Lizi in her previous lifetime. It did not matter that she had suffered a loss because the lessons that she learned could be used on others. 5 days later, the news of Shen Yuan and Jing Chu's engagement spread throughout the Ding capital. Shen Yuan was the most outstanding young master in the Shen residence other than Shen Qiu. He had just returned to the capital after a few years of experience outside, and originally, there was a great future waiting for him. There was no lack of good-looking young ladies in the Ding capital, and if one were to seriously pick, it would not be difficult to find a wife that could help him. Chapter 327. But at the end the choice was a poor young lady from Suzhou. Even if it was old Shenforen's maiden family, if it was other matriarchs, they would definitely not let this kind of poor and white person be a young foreign of a noble family. Who would not know about the matter in the Ding capital? It was rumored in private that the reason why Shen Yuan married the Jing family's young lady as his wife was because he slept with the Jing family's young lady when he was drunk. And this Jing family was not easy to deal with, as they kept on saying that they would report to the authorities. Marrying a poor and white young lady was much better than being reported by the imperial censor and losing his official's hat. Shen Yuan was also forced into a dead end before he resorted to such a scheme. This matter was passed around as a joke in the circle of nobles, and for a few days, Shen Gui would receive the looks of a joke from his colleagues when he went to court, much less Shen Yuan. Naturally their reputation was greatly damaged because of this matter, but to Jing Chu, it was not related at all. She sat in the room and tasted the snacks out of boredom. After shedding all pretense of cordiality with old Shenforen, Jing Chu's original gentleness was all gone and her nature was completely exposed. She grabbed onto Shen Yuan's soft ribs and ate the Shan residence's things, living a very comfortable life. Beside her, the one who was tidying up the room was her personal maid Tao Yuan. Jing Chu did not trust the people of the Shen residence, and now everything was handed over to Tao Yuan alone. Tao Yuan said, "It seems that master and foreign will arrive in a few days. At that time young lady's marriage would be bustling, and when it is spread back to Suzhou, it would be very glorious." Jing Chu smiled. "It is not in vain that my painstaking efforts are not in vain." But Tao Yuan was somewhat worried. Now that second young master and old foreign of the Shen family treat young lady so badly, in the future when young lady marries over, what if they bully young lady? What is there to be afraid of? Jing Chu opened a box of rouge in front of her and looked at it. "I have already inquired about it. Second Biao younger sister is dead, and second Biao Shan is currently crazy and cannot preside over the overall situation. There is only one Yinyang in the second household. A Yinyang would not be able to intervene in the D son's affairs. As for Biao older brother, he would not stay in the residence every day. At that time I would be alone in the second household's courtyard, and can do whatever I want and have a lot of freedom. It's much more comfortable than marrying into the first branch." Be that as it may, Tao Yuan shook her head. But if second young master marries some concubines in the future and brings trouble to miss, it's up to you now. Jing Chuchu looked at Tao Yuan and said as if she was giving alms, "These few years you have been by my side and I see that you are loyal and handsome. If there is a day, I will let second Biao older brother accept you and you can help me win him over. This is considered as my repayment for your loyalty." She smiled with satisfaction. Not everyone has the good fortune to become a concubine of a wealthy family from a maidservant. Tao Yuan lowered her head and quickly said, This servant will listen to young Mississippi." Jing Chuchu closed the rouge and her gaze landed on a bracelet on the dressing table. She could not help but pick it up and stare blankly at it. Upon seeing this, Tao Yuan said in surprise, "Isn't this the bracelet that young Master Sun gave to young Miss?" "Gentleman's son," Jing Chuchu muttered, and her expression was somewhat erratic. "Speaking of which, Gentleman's son treats young Miss very well," Tao Yuan said with a smile. "One do not know how sad he would be upon hearing the news of young Miss's engagement." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Jing Chuchu's eyebrows were vertical as she interrupted Tao Yuan's words. Tao Yuan was not convinced. This servant did not say anything wrong. Even though Gentleman's son and young Miss did not meet much, they felt like old friends the moment they met and even took the effort to give things to young Mississippi. It could be seen that he really put young Miss in his heart. If it was not for second young master's matter, Gentleman's son would definitely think of ways to marry young Miss as his wife. Chapter 328. Jing Chuchu was surprised for a moment and there was a trace of blush on her face as she shook her head. The minister's residence is a noble family. How would they marry a person like me who left home with nothing as a wife? But Gentleman's son really loves young lady. Tao Yuan's words were somewhat outspoken, but Jing Chuchu was not angry, and instead seemed to be somewhat happy. Tao Yuan continued, "It would be good if Gentleman's son becomes the son-in-law of the Jing family. Compared to second young master, Gentleman's son loves young lady like jewels. If one were to marry over, Gentleman's son would also hold young lady in the palm of his hands." "Do not speak anymore." Jing Chuchu suddenly interrupted her words. "Since I have already chosen the Shen family, there is no meaning to talk about Gentleman's Sunday." As she spoke, she was somewhat sentimental. Shen Yuan and Jing Chuchu were not that close, and because of the previous matter, they were in a mutually hostile position. The more it was at this time, the more she remembered Sun Kai-nan's good points. Sun Kai-nan was a talented person, generous with his actions, and was gentle and considerate towards her. It would be a lie to say that she was not tempted. Moreover, one would always keep thinking about things that one could not obtain. Tao Yuan's words were like ants crawling over Jing Chuchu's heart, making her feel itchy. "Young lady." Tao Yuan hesitated for a moment. "Young lady might as well go and meet with Gentleman's Sunday. Gentleman's son knows about this matter but does not know the inside story. Thus it would not be good if he misunderstood you. If it was said out loud, one would only feel heartache for your encounter. It is rare for one to meet such a good person like Gentleman's son in one's lifetime. Gentleman's son would definitely be very sad for young lady doing this." Tao Yuan said, "The last time we met, Gentleman's son said that he would give young lady that dragonfly hairpin." Hearing this, Jing Chuchu's eyes moved. The thing that moved her the most was that Sun Kai-nan kept on sending gifts over. For Jing Chuchu, this was enough. If she were to marry Shen Yuan, she would be able to let Sun Kai-nan not forget about her, and her vanity would be greatly satisfied. Seemingly after thinking for a long while, Jing Chuchu then made up her mind. "What you said is reasonable. I should explain to him. But now that young lady has an engagement with second young master, this matter cannot be seen by outsiders." Tao Yuan said, "It is better to hand it over to this servant. This servant will find a place where there is no one around. At that time, young lady and Gentleman's son will be able to explain clearly, and it would be considered as not letting him down." Jing Chuchu nodded her head. Shen Yuan strode into the courtyard, the veins on his forehead throbbing. Over the past few days, he had endured the strange gazes of the crowd every day. In fact, it was not that others could not see that Shen Yuan was schemed by others. At least it was not the first time that he slept with someone's daughter after getting drunk. Whether it was intentional or not, these few years they had seen it a lot. What everyone cared about was that a young talent like Shen Yuan would actually fall to such a crude and direct method of the woman in the inner courtyard. In particular, this time it seemed to be related to the idiot daughter of the Shen family. Even though Fu Xiui did not blame him, but these days his attitude towards him was much lighter. It was very simple. Now Shen Yuan was a confidant that Fu Xiui had secretly cultivated, but there would be a day when Shen Yuan would stand on the surface. But with such a stain, even Fu Xiuyi's face did not look good. For a person like Fu Xiui who strived for perfection, Shen Yuan's mistake this time was really annoying. Shen Yuan himself was also very sullen. After being treated as a joke by others, he still had to marry Jing Chu, that female who only looked good. Everyone knew that Jing Chu was a vulgar female who only looked at money and did not recognize people, but he actually wanted to marry such a female as his wife. Even if in the future any official's young lady were to look at him, she would not be ridiculed by others for marrying in. Chapter 329. He took a deep breath and stared at the person who was walking towards him. Shen Miao and the two maids walked over from the garden. These days she stayed in the western courtyard and did not go out. No matter how the second household turned the world upside down, she was indifferent and appeared to be much more refreshed. Seeing Shen Yuan, she stopped and called out, "Second older brother." Shen Yuan uncontrollably clenched his fists. Ever since Jing Chu's matter, he had not seen Shen Miao at all. Shen Yuan naturally knew that the only person in the Shen residence who could do such a thing was Shen Miao. But at that time the matter was done by old foreign people and he could not intervene. Moreover, at the moment it was more important to appease those difficult people in the Jing family than to pursue responsibility. But thinking that it was all because of the young female in front of him that he had fallen into such a sorry state, Shen Yuan could not wait to strangle Shen Miao in front of him. Seeing Shen Yuan not speaking, Shen Miao laughed. "Speaking of which, second older brother and Biao older sister are engaged and I have yet to say congratulations." "Congratulations to you, second older brother, for bringing a beauty home." Everyone could hear the sarcasm in her words. Shen Yuan coldly said, "Many thanks to fifth younger sister." After a pause, he looked at Shen Miao. Fifth younger sister has good abilities. Shen Miao accepted it. Every time she showed a face of joy, it would make one go crazy with anger. Shen Yuan sneered, "Fifth younger sister, the tree that stands out in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. It is better to understand this logic earlier. I have never thought that I stand out in the forest. Everyone knows that I am an idiot." Shen Miao pondered. "It is second older brother who is outstanding. The one that the wind wants to rush would not be me. Is it so?" Shen Yuan slowly asked back. "Does fifth younger sister think that success is assured? Do you think that since I married Jing Chu I would lose this game? How could it be?" Shen Miao was very modest. "I know that second older brother is tenacious and indomitable. Thus these small fights would definitely not be placed in second older brother's eyes. It is still early from the end of the chess game." "Perhaps it is not as early as you think." Shen Yuan suddenly smiled strangely. "Perhaps it will end very soon." This strange smile fell on his face, making him look especially sinister. Jingzhe and Guyu frowned but saw Shen Miao raising her brows and asking, "Second older brother wants to scheme against me again? Are you scared?" Shen Miao nodded her head. "I am not afraid of being schemed against by others, but afraid that others will not scheme against me." Her eyes were clear and as innocent as a child's. She smiled and said, "If others don't scheme against me, how would I have the chance? Then you better pray for your own good luck." Shen Yuan sneered. "I'm afraid that when that day comes, you will still be able to laugh so happily." Finished speaking, he strode away. After he left, the smile on Shen Miao's face disappeared without a trace. When Jingzhe and Guyu saw it, their hearts were shocked. Guyu asked, "Young lady, is there anything wrong with second young master?" Shen Miao shook her head. If Shen Yuan was not confident, he would not say those words. But what was it that made him feel that Shen Miao did not even have a chance to turn things around? A sense of uneasiness rose in her heart, but she quickly suppressed it. Shen Miao looked at Shen Yuan's back and softly said, "It is still early for the chess game, but the chess game is almost over." In the Baoxiang Lu in the Ding capital, there was singing and dancing to celebrate peace and prosperity. The fragrance of a female accompanied with laughter was like the best aphrodisiac that attracted passers-by to look over. It was just that their gazes were filled with yearning and envy, but they were shy and could not put on a show of throwing away 1,000 gold for a beauty. In the small building in the tea room, the tea on the table had already turned cold after being left for an entire night. The guard in front dozed off and almost knocked over the teapot, startling him to the point that his sleepiness flew away. With a flick of his toes, the teapot that fell onto the floor steadily stopped on his boots before he picked it up and placed it back on the table. Chapter 330. Emoqing secretly heaved a sigh of relief. In this Bao Xianglu, even the most unremarkable cup was made by the best craftsman, and if it was broken, one would have to compensate. Even though Xin Miao gave him a lot of banknotes, but those banknotes were only used to look for young ladies and not to compensate. Pa 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 applause sounded, and the beauty on the bed looked at this scene coldly and flattered in a neutral tone. Good skills, good martial arts. Really an eye-opener. Emoqing looked away and did not look at the female's bare shoulders. Looking at the sun outside the window, his heart was happy. The sun had come out and the night had passed, and he could relax for another 3 days. As he thought about it, a trace of relaxed joy rose on his face and he was about to stand up and leave. He was happy, but someone's pretty face turned frosty from the joy on his face. Without waiting for him to stand up, Luing sat opposite him and said, "Gentleman." Emoqing looked at the other party without any expression. Luing sized him up. It had been more than a month since Emoqing came to Bao Xianglu to pick young lady Luing, and would come every 3 days. The money was very straightforward, but every time he picked Luing, he would not do anything and just sit by the window for the entire night. At the beginning, Luing thought that it was Emoqing playing some tricks. She had fallen into prostitution for many years and was trained by her mother since young, so she knew that some guests had their own quirks, and this Emoqing was most likely one of those guests with quirks. But as the number of times increased, Luing also felt strange. She had tried to tease Emoqing, and if it really did not work, then naturally he would not budge. But Emoqing would often be teased by her until his ears turned red, but he had to pretend to be serious and indifferent. Obviously he was a virgin. But Emoqing's martial arts skills were high and Luing could not get close to him. She had always been flattered by males, and it was the first time that she was being chased like this. She felt that it was degrading, and later she did not do these pointless fights. But every time she saw Emoqing's relieved expression the next morning, she would feel annoyed in her heart. She was not a scourge or fierce beast, so why would Emoqing hide from her? If Gentleman Emo dislikes that Lu Ying's body is not clean, you can look for other young ladies in Bao Xianglu. Lu Ying's pretty face turned cold and she said in a fit of pique, "Every day there will be young ladies who are very clean, and there are also a lot of virgins. Gentleman Emo need not waste money here with me and cause misunderstandings." Emoqing felt embarrassed in his heart and did not look at Luing. The task that Xin Miao gave him really made him feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. He would rather go to the Shun residence to keep watch at night than to linger in the brothels. Seeing that Emoqing did not speak, Luing was even angrier as she said, "Gentleman Emo should not come over next time. Luing cannot afford Gentleman Mo's money. Take the money and do not do anything. Do not smash the signboard that I have painstakingly built." As she spoke, she turned around and no longer looked at Emoqing. Emoqing touched his nose and felt that it would not help no matter what he said. After all, he would come here every few days to do this kind of thing. Not to mention Luing, he himself felt that he was like a fool. Bao Xianglu was not a place to drink tea, and in Lu Ying's eyes, most likely it was incomprehensible. Without saying anything more, Emoqing put down an ingot of silver and left the door. After Emoqing left, Lu Ying's maid came in to clean up, and when she saw Lu Ying's unhappy gaze, she comforted, "Young lady, do not be angry. Gentleman Emo always took the money every time." Looking at the ingot of silver on the table, Luing was even angrier. This silver was extra for Luing, and there was no need to share it with her mother. She turned her head to look out of the window and said angrily, "Who wants it?" But her eyes were looking at the figure outside the window. Emoqing uncomfortably pushed away the young lady who was trying to throw herself at him, and walked out of the door towards the far end of the street. "Gentleman Emo is a good person," the young maid muttered. "Who knows? Lu Ying was about to withdraw her gaze when she inadvertently swept her gaze to the corner of the street. There was a person standing in the shadows and looking up. That gaze seemed to be looking at her. She was slightly surprised as it was too far away, and one could not see the appearance clearly. She could only see a green robe, and even if it was only a shadow, it seemed to have a strong character. Oh! Lu Ying gently shook the fan in her hands. Could it be that I have become more beautiful recently? One by one, are they satisfied just looking at me? Young lady is born beautiful, and there are many people who want to see young lady. The young maid said sweetly. Lu Ying's lips twitched. Strange people. She closed the window with one hand. At the other end of the street, Mo Qing stopped and frowned as he stared at the green robe in the corner. The place that person was looking at was Lu Ying's little building, but Mo Qing's eyes moved as the green-robed male looked very familiar. He remembered that there was a time when he escorted Shen Miao back to the residence in the horse carriage, and he had met that person once. He heard Jingzhe mention that he was Shen Miao's teacher from Guangwentang. He seemed to be called Pei Lang. Chapter 331. The Jing family's people finally arrived at the Ding capital after a few days. As a small family from Suzhou, the Jing family had learned the face of a vile person who had gained power and power. When the Jing family's husband and wife knew about Jing Chuchu and Xin Yuan's matter, they first cried bitterly and lamented that their daughter's life was bitter. Following that, they clamored to report to the authorities to make Xin Yuan pay the price, and did not even agree to the engagement. On the surface it looked like so, but those with discerning eyes knew that the Jing family's husband and wife were just pretending to be obedient after getting the advantage, and wanted to act like it was Shen Yuan who wanted to marry Jing Chuchu. Old Shen Foreign had been unreasonable in the residence for so many years, and the paternal family's tyrannical behavior was exactly the same as her. After a few rounds of competition, she was actually at a disadvantage. Since she agreed to marry Jing Chuchu in an 8-carrier sedan, she had to compensate with a large amount of betrothal gifts. Old Shen Foreign suffered in silence and was unable to voice out her bitterness. Every day when she faced the Jing couple's greedy faces, she was so angry that her mouth was crooked and her eyes slanted, almost having a stroke. In a fit of anger, he simply hid in Rong Jingtang and refused to see anyone. The Jing family obtained a chicken feather as a command arrow, and in just a few days, all the commoners in the entire Ding capital knew that Shen Yuan was going to marry Jing Chuchu from Suzhou. The commoners did not know the secret of the Shen family's banquet, and the rumors outside were that Shen Yuan was in love with Jing Chuchu's gentleness and beauty and treated her sincerely. The Jing family tried their best to portray Jing Chuchu as a beautiful female that could move one's heart. One did not know how others would see it, but one think that Shen Yuan was extremely depressed. In the minister's residence, Sun Kainan looked at the invitation in his hand, crumpled it into a ball and threw it into the wastepaper basket. Shen Yuan, that bastard, he said hatefully. It was not easy to meet a female that he liked. He had seen a lot of females in the Ding capital, and Jing Chuchu, who came from Suzhou, was especially different. The females that he fancied would never fail, and in addition this time he was playful and spent a lot of effort on Jing Chuchu. He did not expect that at the end Shen Yuan would take advantage of her. The manservant said cautiously, Miss Jing and second young Master Shen had a misunderstanding and had no choice but to do so. No matter what the commoners said, the aristocratic families knew exactly what was going on. Sun Kainan had long heard about everything that happened in the Shen family banquet from the mouths of others. His face sunk. Jing Chuchu, that slut, took this lord's things and was playing with this lord. Sun Kainan was very unhappy in his heart, as he had seen many females like Jing Chuchu. As long as they were given money and benefits, they could be easily won over. One feared that the matter of the Shen residence's family banquet was also related to Jing Chuchu. That woman kept his things on one hand, but at the same time she was planning to marry into the Shen family? To Sun Kainan, being played by a woman was the most shameful thing. But what do you plan to do now? The manservant asked. Are you going to accept Miss Jing's invitation or not? Sun Kainan lowered his head and looked at the invitation in his hand. The invitation was especially fragrant, like the fragrance of a girl. Just like Jing Chuchu's docile and harmless appearance, there was always a restless heart hidden within. Even though she was about to marry someone else, She still came to tease him one last time. Of course, Sun Kainan laughed. This young master has given her so much money, but I haven't slept with her yet. He was already very dissatisfied that Shen Yuan had beaten him to it. How can I not sleep with him at least once? He glared at the manservant. Go reply to the invitation. These days Shen Yuan was not in the residence, and no matter how mischievous the Jing family was, he rarely appeared. But it was hard on Chan Roqiu. On one side she had to deal with old Shen Foreign's anger, and at the same time satisfy the Jing family's insatiable appetite. The money in the public purse was getting lesser and lesser, only going out and not coming in, making one worried. Why is Foreign so worried these few days? Shen Wan returned from court and asked when he saw the situation. Chapter 332. Chen Roqiu forced a smile and did not want to talk about the matter of the money with Shen Wan, so she said, the Jing family has been creating chaos in the residence all day, and it is inevitable to be annoyed. Shen Wan also sighed. This time mother suffered a double loss and Yuaner was also dragged down. Everyone in the Shen residence was well aware of what was going on between Shen Yuan and Jing Chu. Regarding everything that happened at that time, the third household chose to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. At least compared to Shen Yuan, the first household was more feared. Unfortunately at the end the first household was safe and sound, and the unlucky ones were the second household, which caused them to be worried. These days you have worked hard. Chen Roqiu said gently. Since the Shen family is in trouble, you also need to be pointed out by others. The residence was in such a mess that naturally the aristocratic families would see it as a joke. Shen Xian was a rough person and was not afraid of others pointing, but Shen Wan paid attention to his reputation, so these days were not easy. Shen Wan held Chen Roqiu's hands and shook his head. This is nothing much. It is just that after Yuaner married Jing Chu, it would be somewhat troublesome to help each other in the officialdom. He sighed. Originally Yuaner had the most hope. Hearing that, Chen Roqiu's heart was somewhat flustered. Shen Wan did not have his own son, so in the next generation of the Shen residence, only Shen Yuan could take up the heavy responsibility. The most important thing in the officialdom was nepotism. If Shen Yuan married an official's young lady in the future, then Shen Wan's road in the court would be much easier. Now that he married Jing Chu, it was tantamount to cutting off the wings that could be born in the future. Chen Roqiu lowered her head and said, who knows? Now that even fifth lady has become so powerful, eldest brother and eldest Saw's family, it is really difficult. One need not worry. Seeing Chen Roqiu's worry, Shen Wan patted her shoulders. Yuaner is not an ordinary person. Little Five schemed against Yuaner, so Yuaner would definitely return it. Eldest brother and eldest Saw also have times where they are powerless. Husband's meaning is. Chen Roqiu's heart moved. Yuaner is somewhat strange recently. Shen Wan said softly. Always feel that something is going to happen. In the western courtyard, Shen Miao put down the book in her hands and frowned. What exactly does Shen Yuan want to do? Mo Qing whispered. Young lady had already let this subordinate guard Bao Xianglu for a long time. Continue. Shen Miao interrupted his words and Mo Qing's face suddenly collapsed. After thinking about it, he said again. But that Mr. Pei from Guangwen Tang has appeared. What other instructions does young lady have? All along, Mo Qing did not know why Shen Miao wanted him to go to Bao Xianglu to see Lu Ying. That day when he left, he accidentally met Pei Lang, and for some reason, Mo Qing had a feeling that Shen Miao let him go to Bao Xianglu to see Lu Ying. Perhaps she already knew that Pei Lang would appear. Everything that Shen Miao asked him to do had her own intentions, but this time when she heard that Pei Lang had appeared, Shen Miao did not say anything. No. Shen Miao said. Just do your own things well. One did not think that gentleman Pei, who looked like a gentleman, would actually go to Bao Xianglu, that kind of place. Guyu blinked her eyes. He really does not look like that kind of person. She paused before adding another sentence. Guard Mo also does not look like that. Mo Qing's face was flustered. Mo Qing, other than going to Bao Xianglu these days, occasionally pay attention to Shen Yuan's movements in the eastern courtyard. Shen Miao said. He did not know why, but Shen Yuan always made him somewhat uneasy. Mo Qing complied, and after Mo Qing left, Jingzhe asked, Young lady, would second young master have any other bad ideas? Very strange, Shen Miao said. After the incident with the Jing family, Shen Yuan did not investigate what had happened that day, and he did not try to stop it. Even though Jing Chu wanted to marry Shen Yuan, if Shen Yuan used other methods, he would most likely be able to drag it out. But Shen Yuan did not even drag it out, which could only mean that he was currently doing something more important. Shen Miao could not think of anything more important than dealing with her.